across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Welcome to a brand new week of Drive. Thank you to Ian Collins. The master voice is back tomorrow between 1 and 4. But we're back with Drive. Hope you had a good weekend. I moved house. What an absolute nightmare that was. A bit of advice for you. Always leave it to your better half. We're on. So much to talk about. The news being dominated by one story and one story only, of course. Starmer in full retreat. Grooming gang suddenly. In the last few days, Baroness Casey, the report comes out today. We've got all the information here. And suddenly another screeching U-turn by a Prime Minister who says, I'm calling in Britain's FBI. This is the National Crime Agency. It's a dramatic U-turn. This should not have gone on for so long. These children have been maliciously treated. They've been left to deal with this on their own. It's a disgrace. I have to say at this point, actually, it is about time, as it says on the screen. The Tories are not completely blameless in all of this. There was an inquiry, of course, from 2015 to 2022. Nothing was done. I forever have talked on this show about the situation in Rotherham, only because I spent time up there for years working, and I remember it distinctly. And I remember, without any shadow of a doubt, Keir Starmer saying, it's the right, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. We don't need this. You were terrified, of course, terrified as he always has been, that a certain section maybe of the Muslim vote, the British Pakistani vote, would turn against him, and how important were those votes in those constituencies. We know that from the last election. But when the police came out and said in Rotherham, we didn't really do the job we should have done because we were concerned about creating, racial division, multicultural division. So many people at this station and across the land were jumping up and down saying, how is that right? We should be talking about protecting children. So it comes out today that these children have been treated and let down so badly for so long. Yvette Cooper confirming there are ongoing grooming gang investigations where the suspects are illegal migrants. Oh, we've been telling you for ages. There have been deep-rooted institutional failures stretching back decades, says Yvette Cooper. Even good but misdirected intentions played a part in this collective failure. None of which gets away from the fact, I am going to call his judgment into question. Can somebody please explain to me how the man that occupies number 10 can get so many basic things so badly wrong? Screws the pensioners, screeching U-turn. You wait for the farmers, that'll be next. This is cataclysmic in my mind. To say to young kids, no, you're not having a national inquiry. In fact, to go further, if you remember before Easter, before the recess, 45 minutes before Parliament closed, up jumped Jess Phillips, the woman who protects people, women and children, and said there's just going to be local inquiries now. Where's she today? Is she saying anything? Starmer does it again, a massive, massive U-turn. Only one guest I wanted on this, and by the way, please do get involved straight away. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. We'll talk about migrants, we'll talk about the escalation and the problems in the Middle East. We'll talk about how Romeo and Juliet's going to be cancelled now because some idiot thinks that's the wrong way to do things. But the big news story, Starmer announcing a full inquiry into the grooming gangs. We say a very good afternoon to the legend that is Peter Bleksley. Hello.
Good afternoon.
There's you and me out there listening to everything. This is a full retreat from a man who stood up and said, and I quote, this is everybody jumping on the far-right bandwagon.
If you listen clearly, you can hear the horse and cart of that bandwagon being rode roughshod over the reputation of this lamentable government and the appalling man that leads it.
Pete, you say reputation. What I don't get, just to start, is how can you get such basic stuff so drastically wrong? The pensioners, drastic. Kids being abused by British Pakistani men. We're going to say it because we've been saying it for months on this station. Should have been brought to justice and haven't. And members of their community should have spoken up, and politicians should have done more, and the police should have done more. It's a disgrace.
Oh, it's utterly, utterly appalling. As laid out by Baroness Casey in her report, from which, of course, Cooper spoke from today. And let's have a little reflection, if we may, on the words that Yvette Cooper spoke just minutes ago. She is asking for, demanding accountability. Of course, we want accountability, but I heard something very worrying during that particular sentence, because she talked about the accountability of the organisations. No. We want accountability for the individuals.
Absolutely.
Who were those individual police officers who said to their underlings, don't arrest those people, don't investigate this crime, don't turn over that stone, because we want social cohesion.
And she said that in some of the data there has been an over-representation of suspects of Asian heritage. We're not, and have never said on this station, right, that it is all British Pakistani men or Muslim men or whatever, but there has been a large percentage that is a fact. And begrudgingly today, I mean, she says on the one hand, I mean, how you have to have this written. She says the sexual assault of kids is one of the most heinous crimes and has caused unimaginable and unimaginable harm. It is a stain on our society and a failure of those who were meant to protect them. And that goes right to the police. But does it come from above? Or were the police... Let's talk about the Rotherham situation. When I heard that police force say we didn't want to create social, unrest, injustice, whatever, where does that come from? Is that some woke chief constable? Does that come from higher up?
That will be very interesting to find out, and I think these further investigations need to look into exactly that. I suspect it's probably between chief superintendent, superintendent, chief inspector kind of level. So those that have local responsibility but not headquarters responsibility. Has it come from headquarters? That would be a completely different thing. But in order to find out, people are going to have to tell the truth.
I agree. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. I'm going to bring it back to the man who is unbelievably the Prime Minister of this country. Let's just remind ourselves, people, OK, of all the times this Labour government has told us that we don't need an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. It doesn't matter. It'll be dealt with. It's all about the far right. Really? Have a listen, have a watch.
Calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics.
No, the reason we're not doing another national inquiry is because there's already been a national inquiry.
Do you want an inquiry or not?
No, Paul, I'm trying to answer your question, and the answer is no. We don't think another inquiry, after all the many inquiries that we've put victims through, is the way to tackle this.
There has been a huge amount of misinformation this week. Sadly, party political misinformation. It is just wrong.
We've already had a lengthy inquiry, which ended...
broad inquiry that encompassed some parts of the, some towns, 6 towns, I believe. 50 towns have been blighted by this issue. We don't know if it's still going on now. That inquiry was a much broader inquiry.
So you're right in saying it's broad, but we've got to look at what Professor Jay has said as well, which is that this doesn't need a further inquiry, and actually it's time for action. Action,
right? So I'm going to say it again. I'm not just blaming the Labour Party, but every single senior cabinet minister has sort of come out and said, oh, people are using it for political ends. And as a father, and you will share this with me, I go straight to it. Any kid, whatever their colour, that has been subjected to that, in my world, that piece of crap should be hunted down and locked up from now till the end of time, and preferably in my world the key gets thrown away. But we haven't, and it is the Tories. But when it comes to number 10, Starmer, you'd go, that makes sense, let's get this sorted, let's deal with what's wrong. No.
There was one senior government MP conspicuous by her absence from that clip, and I'm talking about Lucy Powell, Leader of the House. Remember?
With Tim Montgomery.
On a BBC programme with Tim Montgomery, the dog whistle. She should have been on that clip. She's a lamentable, obnoxious, truth-denying piece of work.
I love you on Drive. Straight away, you're on the phones. 0344 0344 499 1000 to London. Nick, you're on Drive. Peter Blex is here. What you got?
Hello there. What I can't get is how on earth Keir Starmer can stay in post from this. I mean, there's so much about this which is wrong, so much, but it's barely 5 months since he called people calling for this inquiry, jumping on a far-right bandwagon. He whipped his backbenchers to vote against this inquiry barely 5 months ago. He can't even turn up to the Commons to sit beside the Home Secretary whilst the statement's read out. I mean, the man is an utter moral vacuum.
I completely agree, and I tell you what, the one thing that I love about Talk, and I will continue to love about Talk, and I know Pete will share this with me, is that we're able to speak the truth. And I remember when we first talked about what was happening in Rotherham, people were saying, can you say they're British Pakistani men? Yes, I can. And we can also say this. We have a Prime Minister who is terrified of losing the Muslim vote. And we know that. We look at Jonathan Ashworth, who lost his seat in Leicester. 5 independent candidates stood up, I think, stood for the Gaza situation, didn't talk about local politics. Jonathan, they lost their seats. He is terrified. If it was proven, and it never will be, but this is what I want to get into people's heads this afternoon. You've got a Prime Minister who traded finding out the perpetrators of heinous crimes against young white kids because he was concerned that he might lose a few by-elections. That tells you every bloody thing you need to know about Keir Starmer, right?
And on that very note, the independent and Labour MPs, the ones who recently have been campaigning for an airport in Pakistan, for example, right?
Yes.
I'm not saying, of course, nobody is saying that all Pakistani men are rapists.
Of course they're not. We're not saying that, but you've got to acknowledge that a large number in this situation are.
Because the data is bearing that out. So now is the time for leadership from those communities. I would fully expect those MPs from those communities to stand up, support Cooper in what she said today, support the ongoing investigations and condemn those responsible. And as a community, hand them in.
I completely agree. And here's the other thing. On the one hand, with Rotherham, you had the police saying, we didn't really do a very robust job because we were concerned about division and as we said, multicultural incohesion. You make such a good point, which I just want to repeat again and again. Nobody is saying that British Pakistani men or Muslim men are all like that. But this report by Baroness Casey absolutely highlights that in these instances, and I repeat to all the do-gooders, young, innocent, white kids being raped, OK, this proves that in those instances, a large number were. Why are their communities not calling these people out?
And this afternoon, Yvette Cooper, towards the end of her speech, said that to resolve these matters, it's going to take, quote, all of us. All of us.
Completely.
That means those who are leaders in those communities where these men may have been harboured, will have offended, they need to be turned in. People need to come forward and tell the authorities what they know. They can come forward
without fear of being called a far-right whatever by the Prime Minister of this country. Back to the phone lines. Keep the calls coming. Pete here for a bit. 0344 499 1000. Back to London. Ian, you're on Talk Drive with Peter Blexley and myself. What do you say?
Well, there's a little bit more on what Peter said. My sort of thing is, I think I fell asleep on Tuesday night, and there's going to be a general election, or there has, that all of these 300-odd Labour MPs have suddenly changed. They voted not to sort of want to have an inquiry into all of this, and then all of a sudden they've changed all of it. They've suddenly changed. It's the same thing as with giving the money to the old age pensioners. The one thing I hope that they're going to change, maybe they're going to get rid of net zero.
The thing about this Labour government, and I look, I'm sort of patriotic, and the Tories were an absolute busted flush, and the British people had stopped listening, and I think the Tories could have given us all £1 million, and we still wouldn't have voted for them. But here's the thing: they spent enough time, this Labour Party, in opposition. They had enough time to prepare some sort of strategy. I remember thinking during the election campaign, that Ming Vast thing, don't say anything, don't drop the ball. But the truth is, the minute they got in, they had no plans. But more than that, Ian, this is what I don't get, and Pete as well, right? What I don't understand is some of the decisions are so utterly, ridiculously stupid, right? Pensioners, kids, that you backtrack and you U-turn again. In terms of the MPs, they're whipped, aren't they? They're told what to do. You'll lose your job. This is at Starmer's door, right? Keir Starmer's judgment is in question. Keir Starmer has called it wrong again and again and again. And for all the people who are going to ring up and go, it's time we got the king in, it's not going to happen. We've got this daft whatever for the next 4 years unless his own party choose to replace him with somebody far worse. They are incompetent. They are liars. They are bad planners. And I don't believe, Pete, and I don't mean over the top, I don't believe they care about Great Britain. I really don't get how incompetent these people are.
I think there is such a desperation to cling on to power that in a completely tone-deaf way, in that they refuse to listen to the public out there, to listen to what you're saying, what your contributors, what your callers, your texters are saying. They are tone-deaf to all of it. And let's remember, people say Starmer was a lawyer, Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions. Essentially, he was a civil servant who headed up a large civil service
Not
body.
particularly well, if
The
you're a
Crown-
victim of Jimmy Savile.
The Crown Prosecution Service. And he doesn't do politics. He did internal politics and instilled discipline within his party, but outside of that, the man is incapable of doing politics. He is not a man of the people. He has no charisma.
But that's
He's
my
not
point.
an orator. He's an oaf.
But this is my point, and we're going to keep this going. By the way, please keep your calls going. We're going to change the whole lot. 0344 499 1000. Here's what I don't get. We're not like super intelligent men. But if I said to you, right, Pete, we're in the government tomorrow and there's been a bunch of kids, white kids who have been raped by British, let's get this sorted. No. I tell you how bad his judgment is. Do you remember the Southport riots? I feel so strongly about this. When Rudabika, all the information that they knew, right, they didn't allow to come out. And so people online had it in their heads this was an illegal migrant and the whole thing caused mass hysteria. The government could have said, no, he's a choir boy from Wales who's gone the wrong way, blah, blah. They didn't choose to. And I think, and I could be totally wrong and I might get censured for what I'm about to say, look at Ryan, the finger is hovering over the button. I believe that Starmer's that stupid he thought it suited him to allow that trouble to escalate so he could send the police onto the streets, call everybody far right and show that he was strong. But the truth of the matter is, like Baroness Casey has said, the truth, these were British Pakistani men. A large number of these perpetrators were Muslims, were Pakistanis. They were not from the United Kingdom, as is. That's a fact, right? It's not racist. It's not out there. It's an absolute fact. And if we cannot, as a society, expect our bloody police or our government to say, listen, mate, I don't care the colour of your skin. You've raped an 8-year-old child. You're going down forever. I don't know what's wrong with us. It's beyond me.
And we have to link this to another very, very important scandal that's going on in the UK at the moment, because Baroness Casey's report found some of these offenders were asylum seekers.
Yep, absolutely.
And let's remember...
there we go.
1,500 people came into this country on boats in 4 days last week. 1,500 in 4 days.
And the weather's great, so there's more coming. But we can't say it on this station because if you imply that, single men who are escaping war-torn France, are going to come here... No, this is a fact. Let's remind ourselves, right? Are you all right to stay a little bit longer?
Yes, of
Let's
course.
remind ourselves of what the Home Secretary said about the ethnicity of the perpetrators. This is Yvette Bulls earlier. Have a listen.
We will set out the further details on the national inquiry in due course. Mr. Speaker, I warned in January that the data collection we had inherited from the previous government on ethnicity was completely inadequate. It was only collected on 37% of suspects. Baroness Casey's audit confirms that ethnicity data is not recorded for 2/3 of grooming gang perpetrators, and frankly, it is ridiculous and helps no one that this basic information is not collected, especially when there have been warnings and recommendations stretching back 13 years about the woefully inadequate data on perpetrators, which prevents patterns of crime being understood and tackled.
So I'm not going to put this at Starmer. The data wasn't taken.
This is the wokerati, the liberal elite in action.
Yeah.
This is what they do. Let's not collect the data because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to read it.
Who makes that decision?
Well, again, this inquiry should reveal that. Who has been blocking, stopping, or otherwise impinging data being collected? Because of the 3 forces that they did look into, that did have some data, they showed that there was a high percentage of Asian men, as Cooper called it, responsible for these rape gangs. So, what would it say when all the data is collected from these towns affected?
So we have wokerata, and we've gone on about it on this station and this show forever. There are people in positions of power who are so woke or so terrified that it might be racist or they might be... maybe it's because they could lose their seats. I'm targeting somebody in my head who I know disagrees with everything I say, and they will say, oh, you're being really unfair to Asian men. No, the data hasn't been collected by institutions or organisations because they're concern. We are not saying it is every Muslim man. We are not saying it's every British Pakistani man, but we are saying that if the proof is in the pudding, then surely the country, the people, the whatever, people should know about it, right?
And what I am alleging is that data has deliberately not been collected because it's a truth that's too uncomfortable for the wokerati and people who perhaps rely on block votes.
Quite right. What do you make of all this? Has gone crazy this afternoon. 0344 499 1000. That's the telephone number. Jodie takes your call. She can send us a WhatsApp voice note to Ryan 0344 499 1000. Text messages flying in as well. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. PB and JK back in 3.
I think the boycott of those two ministers by the UK is unacceptable. Israel's a democracy.
Is that we have been pushing for this now for many, many months, and we've had a Prime Minister whose response to that has been to say things of Kemi Badenoch and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, along the lines of us jumping on some far-right bandwagon, or as Lucy Powell put it, to be responding to dog whistle politics, which is really pretty outrageous. Now, it's good that the Prime Minister has finally buckled on this one, but it's late in the day, which is deeply regrettable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 4:25, we're live across the UK. Monday afternoon, this is JK on Drive. Peter Blexley, legend, is with me. On the day that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, a man who makes more honestly, has bowed to pressure and has announced a full national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. That is a subject that so many people, a lot on this station, have gone on and on about. There was an inquiry, of course, 2015 to 2022 when this first started with the Tories. Nothing on earth too overreaching, too wide-ranging. The fact of the matter is, and we said it on this station repeatedly, in Rotherham, Peter Blexley, one of the worst areas, the police have said, and I quote in the past, we didn't really want to be too aggressive in the way we looked into this. Yes, 8-year-old white girls were being raped by Asian men, but you know what? We're British Pakistani men. We didn't really want to cause social division. I think, Peter Blexley, that's a disgrace, and I'm with you. We can go on and on at politicians, but there are police officers and people in local positions of responsibility who are also absolutely in the dock today.
It's unforgivable cowardice. That's what it is, cowardice. When you join the police, you know, you swear an oath on your first day, okay? And that oath should mean something. You get your warrant card, you go through your training. That oath should live with you throughout your service. Some of these police officers get so absorbed in trying to get the next rank, climb that greasy pole of promotion, that they completely discard any moral compass that they may or may not have had at some point in their life, and for the benefit of social cohesion, will throw young women, figuratively and almost literally, to the wolves.
And it's interesting today that Yvette Cooper said, you picked up on this, and I just want people, because loads of people are responding. Sam in Brighton, I'll read your text in a sec. She says, local communities, we're all in this together. There has been a suspicion for a long time that the Wokarati, whether it's institutions, whether it's the communities these people come from, have protected them and said nothing for fear of, maybe, Keir Starmer, we're not having one because it's the far right. Everybody jumping on the far right bandwagon. Not all. Sam in Brighton says they're not calling them out, Jez, because we are becoming second-class citizens in our own country. We are infidels, so they don't care at all what happens to British white kids. Community leaders in that culture will always band together, but they need to stand up. Good afternoon, Alison. She says Starmer has no idea what he's doing. All he does is test the water to see what reaction he gets from us. Reform then took council seats, so Labour are running scared. Starmer should apologise to all of us. The world is laughing at our stupidity. Sean, good afternoon. How disgusting. The politicians are playing politics with rape victims, kids. They should all be ashamed and put politics aside for once in their lives. Graham, maybe there should be an inquiry as to why Labour didn't want an inquiry. Graham in Bushy. We know why, because they're terrified of losing that vote. Gareth Nixon, the officers on the street for Peter Blexley would never have not arrested these people. They would have been ordered not to. The management is exactly what the government wants and is. What that is, who the hell knows? This comes from up high.
Oh, well, undoubtedly, for the last couple of generations of senior police officers, if not longer, they've all been university educated, some would say brainwashed, I would say, and consequently they are part of a leftist, wokerati, liberal kind of.
But you know, I want to say want to say to chief constables and Keir Starmer and anybody, and probably because I'm a father of 6 and I'm trying not to lose it. Starmer, 7 and 8-year-old white girls were raped. Do you understand that as the father of a daughter? I mean raped, OK? Her life forever ruined. And not you, but people in this country hid this. And the fact that you had the temerity to say, we're not going to look into this because this is just the far right. You put politics, as that text said, absolutely in front of what's right and what's wrong. To get justice for those victims, whose lives will never be any better, by the way, you said, that is pitiful and shameful. We'll go to Kent. So many people. Peter Blexley's with me. Stephen, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Hi there. I was very glad to hear that there's going to be an inquiry, but I have a big worry. The fact that it's taken so long and the people that were perpetrating the offences maybe be able to find, but people in charge, policemen, social service workers, even legal departments and people at councils have had time to cover up. How are we going to stop the cut with the details that the inquiry needs?
I agree with that, Pete.
Oh, sadly, and so do I. That is a great concern. I'm sure that the shredders have been clanking for many years.
But I mean, I'm sat here going, these are kids. You're going to use a shredder, you horrible... God, round them up, mate.
I come back to this point I made earlier. There are people that are going to have to look in the mirror, stare deep into their souls and say, I have to tell the truth. I need to come forward and tell the truth. Or else this diabolical stain on our nation is never going to go away. You know, it's going to be here forever.
I agree. And Steve, you know, we've talked already in the first half an hour of this show that to me it sounds as if this was a political decision by Starmer, now and before, by labelling everybody far right. I don't understand how the most basic politician, how the most basic police officer, how the most basic social service worker does not have the morality in every fibre of their being to say that kids being raped, whatever the colour of their skin, is fundamentally wrong, and we will not rest until we track down the scum that thinks that's OK. Steve, I don't get that, do you?
No, not at all. But I think we do need to take to task the people who have covered up and to send out a warning. We have to send something out which says, if you have covered up, we will get you and we'll get to you with an offence which could mean imprisonment. It's got to be really hard this time because we'll only ever do it once.
Completely agree. Rob, good afternoon. Amazing, isn't it? The Labour Party is all of a sudden, Peter, concerned about these young girls. They're only bothering because of the huge public outcry about this. Rob in Wiltshire, can I say the one thing I love about this country at the moment is that the British people are finding their feet and their voice. And whether it's the pensioners, whether it's this disgusting story, next, please God, it's the farmers, I'm not talking, people say to me, oh, sometimes you sound like you're... I'm not encouraging people to do anything. I'm encouraging people to understand that their vote's important, their voice is also important, because these people that purport to be our representatives are only there because of us, and our views are important, aren't they, PB?
Voices are very important, and when we're talking about voices, let's rewind the clock a little bit, and I'm not going to repeat any of the language. Look how certain people described those children. There was appalling titles attached to them, appalling descriptions attached to them. It was victim blaming. Absolutely. And all those articles are still out there, and all those media outlets that wrote those articles and wrote those headlines and gave those descriptions can be held to account, because the internet never forgets. As well as Steve so rightfully points out, we need accountability. Misconduct in public office is almost a unique crime, because to do nothing is misconduct in public office.
Phil Downs, I don't know which MP, but he booked Cooper, my MP. This is Yvette Cooper, is it Daisy Cooper? Stated that no child rapist will ever get asylum. Will she now overturn all the cases where human rights lawyers have got judges to grant asylum to these vile child rapists? Could not agree more. Tracy Sutcliffe, good afternoon. Jez and Pete, the Tories could have set up a national inquiry at any time in the 14 years they were in power. They chose not to. They disgust me in equal measure. Please God, Starmer the U-turner does it for us farmers next. Good afternoon to Paul in Dorset. Jez, Pete, Starmer has not done the right thing. He let slip the announcement of the weekend because he had read the report and realised he had no choice. Welcome back after your move. Thank you. Hello to, oh my God, Rob from Burnley. Notice that Mrs Cooper only referred to the last 15 years. Tory years. Has this gone full circle now with Labour blatantly politicising it? Caroline Wisdom. So many people, Pete. Keir Starmer is becoming the master of the U-turn over many issues, but in the instance of the rape gangs, I can't help wondering if his strong stance that this was a far-right bandwagon before finally seeing the light was to stall for time. I believe he is the arch protector of the establishment, and he was providing time for the high-profile but complicit individuals to get their ducks in a row and cover their bloody tracks. Wow. This inquiry will unearth guilty fall guys, but those at the top of the establishment, sadly, will probably be protected. Kaz from Bedford, which is what we're saying, right?
Yep. Well, let me give you my opinion, if I may. Keir Starmer announced this inquiry over the weekend. I'll tell you why he did it. He did it for power. He did it for position. He did it for himself. He didn't do it for the victims.
Completely. Listen, this is great. Andy from Thatcham. This should be read out every 5 minutes. Not only do I want to see the perpetrators for raping young girls rot in jail, but the MPs, policemen and women, chiefs, councillors, council workers, agency workers, Muslim community elders, imams and probably more must also face justice for hiding the true extent of what this did to the phone lines. We'll head north to Birmingham. Michelle, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon.
Oh, hello, you're right.
Yeah, I'm good. What do you want to say, sweetheart?
Right, OK. First of all, I want to say they're not just rape guns, they're paedophiles. That's what they are as well. It's organised crime. My blood is absolutely boiling. And this is not just, you know, the north of England, like West Yorkshire, up over Leeds and that way. This is in Nottingham in the 90s. And everybody that's listening, Google it. There's a book, you can buy it. It was written by a journalist and it's called Dark Hearts. And there was actually a documentary done by Panorama. And there's something very similar happened in Nottingham. And we was under a Labour government. It's a Labour council, and it was all covered up, and they was using young children, and they was trafficking them down to London for the purposes of prostitution, and these children was vulnerable children and children in care. And the person that was behind it was actually sat in meetings with Nottingham City Council and Nottinghamshire Police. And he ran a charity that was meant to help drug addicts. But it was all a front.
Just because, forgive me if I ask, are you a mother? Are you a mother?
I'm a mother, yeah. I've got 4 children. Right. I've got 1 daughter.
So I've got 4 daughters, and I'm sitting here, and Pete's got boys, but I'm sitting here, and I don't even know why I'm having this conversation. I don't even know why I'm giving lip service to people who are going, oh, they've covered their tracks. How does anybody, morally, both of you, think it's okay for any institution or any human being to hide the truth of young girls being raped by you're right, paedophiles. It doesn't matter the colour of their skin. They should have been brought to justice.
No. But you see, the problem is, Jeremy, when we say a paedophile, or if we go back to the 80s when they used to tell us you don't go to the white man in the van, he's got a bag of sweets or he's saying he's got a puppy, he's going to do something naughty to you. That rhetoric suits the government and previous governments that it's a paedophile is a white man, an older white man. This is organised crimes. They're not just rapists. When people say grooming gangs, grooming is the start of the process. It is that luring in that child, because they are children, regardless of whether you'd say they're teenagers, 13, 14, they are still children.
Doesn't matter.
And they're luring them in, and then, to their own sick enjoyment, they commit these... my blood is boiling. But these men, and they are, the majority of them, they're Pakistani, let's say it as it is. In Pakistan, it is okay for them to rape their women if that woman is of a lower caste.
I don't know about that. We have to be, what we have to be very careful of, and I just want to say, I appreciate it, we have to be very careful not to generalise when we're doing this, don't we, Pete, right? Yvette Cooper's admitted today that a large number of these rapists were Muslim orientation. And that's what she said, but apparently the data hadn't been collected. Well, the cynics amongst us will say that's a cover-up by the wokerati. But the fact of the matter is, and I get her frustration, and people will say things, but we can't say that about everybody, but we can absolutely say that we shouldn't live in a society where our police or our authorities turn a blind eye to young girls being raped for fear of social incohesion. Because I tell you what will happen, in the end, social cohesion won't be happening anyway, because people are going to say this is completely, utterly and fundamentally wrong. That's the truth.
And the events following that dreadful Southport attack last year shows how fragile social cohesion is. But in answer to the question about the senior police officers and the social workers and other people within councils and the such like, it's when public service becomes self-service. Because that's what they did. They were self-serving individuals who forgot any kind of morality whatsoever and thought about themselves, that next grade on the management ladder, that next rank on the police promotion ladder.
To the detriment of young girls who have been raped and trafficked and... oh my God.
Or, as they would say, in the name of social cohesion. And I reckon that if somebody ever gets arrested over this and gets charged with misconduct in
a
public office, and they decide to go into the witness box, or they get convicted and they put forward their litigation, they will probably try to say, we thought we were doing the right thing. We wanted to maintain social cohesion.
Well, if you're going to tell me that social cohesion is more important than protecting the rights of young white girls, then that's what's wrong with this country, right?
Of course I wouldn't.
No,
not for one moment. But I could just imagine somebody having been convicted by way of mitigation saying, we didn't want to go into this community and cause a riot, for example.
You are an absolute legend. He's only come here for 10 minutes. He stayed 45. We love having you on, Pete. Such a great start to the show. Peter Blakeslee, former Met Police detective, a man who says it as it is, and that's what this show is as well, and this station. Talk Drive is on, the home of free speech and common sense. What do you make of it on the day that Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer scarpers to the G7 summit after announcing he is going to have a full national inquiry into the fact that young white girls were raped by Asian gangs? His Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's been up saying we need to listen to Baroness Casey. This has been a cover-up, not just by this government, by the Tories before. This is a disgrace. It's a stain on our country. What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. Back in 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
2 minutes to 5, we're live across the UK. JK on Drive. You are as appalled as I am about this. I mean, honest to God, man, you can talk about, you know, today Keir Starmer announces a U-turn. There is going to be a national inquiry into the grooming gangs. I was here the day before the Easter recess when Jess Phillips stood up and said, we're not going to have a national one, we're not going to have local ones. Have a great Easter. And everybody was like, what the hell, do these people not care? I think Peter Bleksley is absolutely spot on. I think this goes higher. I believe that there are people who have, well, let these children down in offices, public offices, who should be prosecuted. I don't believe this is simply the Labour Party. The Tories ruled for 14 years. But there's been a systematic cover-up. And when we talked, and I keep saying I don't care until the end of the programme, when we talked about the Rotherham situation many months ago on this show, I remember saying to a police officer, he said, the reason we didn't, you know, they didn't really do that is they don't want to cause social, you know, unrest. Right, so we don't want to cause social unrest, so we'll just trade 8-year-old white girls being raped, will we? Let's remind ourselves of what the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, set out in the Commons earlier. Have a listen, pin back your logos.
The findings of her audit are damning. At its heart, she identifies a deep-rooted failure to treat children as children. A continued failure to protect children and teenage girls from rape, from exploitation and serious violence, and from the scars that last a lifetime. She finds too much fragmentation in the authorities' response, too little sharing of information, too much reliance on flawed data, too much denial, too little justice, too many criminals getting off, too many victims being let down. The audit describes victims as young as 10, often those in care, or children with learning or physical disabilities, being singled out for grooming precisely because of their vulnerability. Perpetrators still walking free because no one joined the dots, or because the law ended up protecting them instead of the victims that they had exploited.
Whatever your political persuasion, it's a disgusting stain on our society. In the chamber, listening to Yvette Cooper, the Sun's chief political editor joins me now. Jack Elsom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. You actually given me another promotion. I'm the political editor. I'm not the chief political editor.
Well, I don't care.
There is only one of me, I suppose.
You know me, we're mates. I don't think I've ever been more angry than I am this afternoon, and it's probably because I've got 4 daughters, and I don't label this. We can talk about how this appalling, disgusting, stupid Prime Minister U-turns more often than anybody I've ever met because he quite patently cannot read the room. But it says nothing, does it, Jack, about our society, that for some reason this has been just not dealt with, has been covered up. I mean, Peter Bleksley was saying this is the wokerati. She said earlier, didn't she, only 37% of the data had been collected, which makes people like us think, why was that covered up? But at the root of all of this, my friend, young, innocent, white girls whose lives are blighted forever. It is disgusting. Disgusting.
No, you're totally right. And I think today is nothing short of a day of shame for the British state. I mean, I've been going through Louise Casey's report for the past hour, and it makes for one incredibly grim reading, but also for absolutely shocking reading when it comes to the systematic cover-up by local authority. She talks about, as you mentioned, ethnicity, saying that where there should have been clarity and clear identification of the overrepresentation of Asian rape gangs, there was obfuscation and distraction. That serves nobody. When you have authorities trying to get to the bottom of a problem, it serves absolutely in no one's interest whatsoever, especially the victims who are at the heart of all this, to basically manipulate and bury data, which could lead to prosecutions.
But that's my point, and Pete and I have been at it for 45 minutes. What does it say about a society, whether it's politicians, social workers, police, council officials, forget the political questions here. Morally, I don't understand, as a father of 4 girls, how anybody sleeps at night. But let's talk from your stance, which is political. Now, Starmer, who I don't think I've ever known a politician who doesn't read the bloody room, got the pensioners thing badly wrong and has had to backtrack and was humiliated, makes this announcement at the weekend, scarpers off to the G7 summit, leaves Yvette Cooper to do his dirty work. Fair enough. That's, I suppose, the joy of being the Prime Minister. But can you explain to me, right? Because I have this real fear that I'm right. And if I am, you'll tell me. If I'm not, you'll tell me. Keir Starmer said that when there were big calls for a national grooming gangs inquiry, everybody was jumping on the far-right bandwagon. I suspect that was him reacting to the fact that he was terrified, Jack Elsom, of losing the Muslim vote, which is very important. We know it cost them 5 seats. Independent people stood in the last election and Labour lost those seats. Jonathan Ashworth, one of those famously in Leicester East, they stood on a Gaza ticket. Are we saying, and I know it's difficult, that our Prime Minister was prepared to trade sorting what's right and wrong for these dear beloved victims from a political point of view? Because it's a dreadful day today to make that U-turn. Tells us everything about the man, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm sure only Keir Starmer knows what was going through his mind when he made those pretty silly comments back in January, accusing people of jumping on a far-right bandwagon. He obviously then seemed to outsource the decision to Baroness Louise Casey. And when she came back and said that nothing short of a national inquiry would be sufficient, the decision was made for him. And there was no way after that point he could go against it. One, because otherwise what's the point in doing an audit? But I think more seriously, I think the public outcry would be absolutely immense. I think that goes to the heart of it here. This is clearly a big moment of political danger for Keir Starmer. He's committed yet another U-turn. But I presume the calculation in number 10 is that if he didn't commit to this full national inquiry and the full other recommendations, the public anger would just be absolutely immense. This is a subject here which has haunted our history for a few decades, obviously completely come to the fore in the past few months or so.
But then answer me this:
there's no other way out.
You were in the chamber today. Don't take this the wrong way. A good friend of mine. You're a political nerd. You understand these people. I don't. Explain to me how any sane human being does not have the foresight or the intelligence to go, my God, this is about kids. This isn't about keeping the Muslim or whatever, the British Pakistani. This is a fact. It's not about keeping people sweet. This is about identifying who the perpetrators of these heinous crimes are and making sure that they are dealt with and thrown in jail. For any politician to not have that, in my humble opinion, as the first reason for how you react is beyond me. Is he stupid? Are the people around him stupid? The pensioners thing was awful. I would have thought this was an easy thing to go. It's fundamentally wrong. I'm going to move heaven and earth to bring these people to justice, even if it does, sadly, in this instance, point out that a large majority of them were Asian, were British Pakistani. We're not being racist. That's a fact. It's there for all to see. But we have a Prime Minister who will say, I did everything right. I asked for an inquiry. Why hasn't he got the balls to make the right decision himself? That's what I worry about.
I think there are 3 main reasons to that. The first is, as Trevor Phillips, the former chair of the Equalities Commission, has pointed out, I think that Keir Starmer clearly was petrified about losing more of the Muslim vote, who he had already lost at that general election. Obviously, you made the point that many MPs, or a few MPs, lost their seats to the so-called Gaza independents. Lots of the community getting increasingly disenfranchised with the Labour Party over their stance over the Israel-Gaza war. Second, I think that he didn't want to hand a win to Tories and Reform, who are very quick out of the traps, calling for this national inquiry in the first place, elevated by people like Elon Musk. And the third, I think that Keir Starmer, a lot of the time, is a point that my colleague Harry Cole makes today in The Sun. He's too much of a technocrat and a lawyer than actually a political leader at certain times. And so when he came out and said that he wouldn't hold this national inquiry, he was making almost technocratic detail points about how, we had an inquiry quite recently and it could take some time to do it. And sort of actually it was sort of getting into the nitty gritty, when what a lot of people want is for a prime minister and the leader of their country to actually grasp and show them how seriously he is taking a subject. And the national inquiry, I think, was really sort of the standard bearer for that. And I think that by dismissing those calls, batting them away, he fed into this narrative that actually he's just not taking it with seriously. And I think the gravitas that it deserves.
I agree, and I think it's really simple. And maybe I'm wrong, mate, and I've got to move on. But here's the point. If I was the Prime Minister, I'd have simply gone upstairs in 10 Downing Street to my 14-year-old daughter who might be doing a GCSE, and I've looked at her and I thought, I owe it to her and all the people of her age and younger whose lives have been blighted. And I've gone downstairs and I've said there was a national inquiry. There doesn't seem to be organically in the man the ability to make decisions that to the rest of us are blindingly obvious. Mate, you're such a busy man. I know you are, and we're really, really appreciative. So it's political editor or chief political. You're just the boss, aren't you? The man now, aren't you?
If you say so, then I'm happy to take that.
We love you. Jack Elson from The Sun, live and exclusive on Talk Drive. Back in 3.
Rachel Reeves, all of the cabinet, they go, oh, well, you know, we're reporting on, they've got no answer, because they don't know. But I do. They're going into social houses, they're going into council houses. So British people who have lined up for years to get their social housing, council houses, will have to go to the back of the queue, while these foreigners who broke into our country illegally will go to the top of the queue. That, ladies and gentlemen,
unacceptable.
That is modern Britain.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Time I've heard such a response on the day the Prime Minister bows to pressure and announces a full national inquiry into those grooming gangs. We're not worried about social cohesion or the police upsetting people. We need to lock these vile paedophiles up. To the phone lines. David's in Exeter. Literally 2 minutes, David. What you got?
So I want to know whether the first person to be summoned to the inquiry under oath is Gordon Brown, and whether he's going to be challenged that was it or was it not the case that he instructed the Home Office and the Chief Constables to ignore statutory rape as a lifestyle choice.
Is that true?
Well, you need to speak to Maggie Oliver and a few people in that end of the world. It has been mentioned, and the reason I'm suggesting it is that he needs to go in front of the inquiry and answer under oath what exactly went on in the Cabinet under collective responsibility, and whether the Home Office then instructed the Chief Constables to ignore statutory rape.
Yeah, I heard that. He, of course, says this is fabrication, but I tell you what I do think your point makes, and we made it already, is that apart from the inability, the deafness of this government and past governments to even understand how much of a stain that this is on our society in general, it's how many people in public office, whether it's Gordon Brown or I don't know, have they covered this up? Are they complicit? And as Peter Blexley said, if they are, we as a society need to make sure those damn people are brought to justice. Thank you to David in Exeter. We'll head north. Well, not really. up to the right. We're going back to London. Fiona, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon. What you got?
Hi, Jeremy. Just a few things really. I'm actually really, really angry about the whole thing. Quite a lot of it's already been covered by some of the callers that have already phoned in today. But I just really do feel that it's a real total whitewash. I mean, we're given the impression that they were not aware of the origins of the perpetrator's ethnicity. But this was exposed many years ago by Maggie Oliver, and also, probably the wrong thing to say, but Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and their lives have been made hell after this. I really do feel that this is cover up more, not just at local level.
I think you're right, and I think what it does point to is, and I think there are not just people in public office, but I think there are commentators and activists and all sorts of do-gooders who think that the right thing to do is to protect what they see as, you know, the crushed minority. There is not a racist bone in my body. Speak to anybody that you know. But if you are going to tell me that I am to live in a society where the police are to say, we're not going to actually investigate what went on in Rotherham for fear of causing social, you know, unrest amongst the Muslim community. That is fundamentally wrong. I will say at the end of the first hour of this show today what I said at the beginning. I don't give a toss the colour of your skin. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what's your religion. I care about the fact that young girls, young white girls, have been raped, and society has covered that up. And if they've covered it up for fear of whatever, then they are fundamentally wrong and should be brought to justice. I think it's an absolute flipping stain. 20 seconds, Fiona. Do you agree with me? Do you think these people should be locked up?
100%, and also I think they should be deported as well. Not even locked up over here. I think they should be deported. Just one quick thing is that they talked about introducing a bill for having intimacy with underage minors. That's already in place. That's been there for years.
Couldn't agree more. Fee, I've got to go. Don't think me rude. Really appreciate it. What an hour. If you want to be on in the next hour, Benedict Spence from 5. 0344 499 1000. This, my friends, is Drive Time on Talk. We're live across the UK, and the news is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, hour 2 of Drive for Monday. We're live across the UK on Talk. Of course, the home of free speech and common sense. I don't think, actually, I know some people go, oh, you're always... I'm not. This is just one of those things that strikes... Just makes my blood boil. I don't understand if you've just tuned in. The Prime Minister has bowed to pressure and has announced a full national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Yvette Cooper jumping up in the Commons this afternoon and saying the Baroness Casey's report, the long-awaited report, is a damning indictment of a cover-up, that there were large numbers of data that was just ignored and not taken, that the Asian and British Pakistani men, many of them were responsible. She also said that many of the rapists were asylum seekers, and bearing in mind that 1,500 have arrived in the last 4 days, and I'm told that because the weather's great, there's going to be even more. How many of these undocumented men are rapists? I'm not just, for all the do-gooders, oh, you're saying that all asylum seekers... No, I'm not. I'm not saying that all Muslims, I'm not saying that all British Pakistani men, I'm not saying that all illegal migrants. What I'm saying is young, white, British girls were raped. And it is absolutely, fundamentally and morally wrong to think, whether it's politicians, police, local councillors, whatever, if this has been covered up, it is an absolute stain on the United Kingdom. Hello to Rob. Jez, the statement that Yvette Cooper just made in that clip about missing data is her department. In the 1960s, she would have had to resign. Today, they get away with it. Colleen, oh my God, I'm so angry. Yvette Cooper saying yet again they inherited it from the last government. But hey, didn't Labour have a vote about an inquiry and they were whipped into a no vote? They're morons. Listen, it's not wrong what she says. There were 14 years of Tory rule and nothing really came out. It should have done. Good afternoon, Jez and Pete. Have you noticed how Starmer has scarpered off to the waste of time G7? He is a coward and a hypocrite and should be here to face the music. Keep up the good work. That's Imogen. Good afternoon, G. Far too many woke and left-wing people in positions of power in the UK, and they are destroying the values and the fabric of our country. And anybody who is found to have hidden what's been happening with these gangs, if it's the police officer, an MP, social services, they should be held to account and prosecuted for failing to do their job. I believe this inquiry won't even scratch the surface, as evidence will have been destroyed and information will be buried and not disclosed to the public. And that's the concern. People already saying, right, this has taken ages. Starmer was up, wasn't he, a few months ago going, oh, this is all a bandwagon. It's all the far right. It's not the far right at all. It's not the far right. It's people who are saying, I'm sorry, we don't like 8-year-old white girls being raped. Take a listen to what the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said when she apologised to the victim, for goodness sake. Pin back your logos.
On behalf of this and past governments and the many public authorities who let you down, I want to reiterate an unequivocal apology for the unimaginable pain and suffering that you have suffered and the failure of our country's institutions through decades to prevent that harm and keep you safe. But words are not enough. Victims and survivors need action. The reforms I've set out today will mean the strongest action any government has taken to tackle child sexual exploitation, more police investigations, more arrests, a new inquiry, changes to the law to protect children, and a fundamental overhaul of the way organisations work to support victims and put perpetrators behind bars.
Too little, too late. Certainly one thing's for sure. It should have happened a damn sight sooner. I agree with Ant before we get to Benedict Spence. He says, Jez, there will be a lot of senior police officers and social workers who will not be sleeping well tonight, waiting for the day the knock will come to their door to tell the truth. The way Labour can stand there and pretend they are behind this makes me sick to the stomach. We say a very good afternoon to a good friend of the show, a man who always speaks his mind, Benedict Spence, a Conservative commentator, back in the mansion in Norfolk. How are you, sir? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I'm well. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, but the problem is sometimes I think I shouldn't do this job. I don't understand. There's so much about this that I was asking Jack, and I'll ask you, right? Morally, as a father, I know you're not a father. I've got 4 girls. I cannot understand how a society, I don't care whether it's MPs, other politicians, social workers, local council leaders, police officers, Maggie Oliver's right. How can we as a society have allowed this not to have been investigated? That is a disgrace. We hear all the lefties and the wokerati saying, oh, this is an absolute disgrace to our country, isn't it?
Well, first and foremost, we need to remember who it was who was the victims in all of this, and that is not just white girls, but working class people.
Yeah.
And I think that that underpins a great deal of why it is that we should be able to understand exactly how this happened, and that is that as much as we like to pretend that we've moved from a sort of a post-class system to one that now cares deeply about other things, where racism is the most important thing, actually the prejudices of this country are the same as they have always been. Working class people are at the bottom and everybody else has some sort of protected status. If this had been middle-class girls, if these had been a different ethnic minority en masse, there would have been protections, there would have been intervention, and actually a lot more would have been done to stop this. But these people were seen as expendable because they belong to a class of people who, broadly speaking, are not really cared about by a lot of people in Westminster or the media beyond what they can sell them or what votes they can get. That's really important, I think, just as the starting point. That's how this happened. This country is not any more enlightened in many ways than it was 50 or 100 years ago. It still operates on this class-based system. It has imported people from another culture who have a very different way of looking at things to how we do, and it's based a lot more on things like honor and also on things like ethnicity. And this is where you also see the fact that they were the members of these various communities, and it's wrong to just say Pakistani. This is something that needs to be understood, because a lot of the multiculturalists, the globalists, the people who like migration themselves do not understand Pakistan is not one culture. Pakistan is a tribal culture with lots of different competing cultures, many of which don't get on, and there is an awful lot of violence within that society between different groups of people. That is something that we have never understood in this society, and frankly, a lot of the people who like to ignore what was going on, they didn't want to know about it. They didn't want to get to know about the cultures that they were importing. They just assumed everything would be fine. But what we did was we imported people, many of whom, not all, but many of whom, took the attitude that people of different ethnicities or different religions, and indeed different sex, the opposite sex, were considered fair game because they were not part of your own tribe. And that is a fundamental thing that we may think doesn't happen because this is the UK in the year of our Lord 2025, but trust me, this is still how much of the rest of the world operates.
And therein lies, let's be perfectly honest, therein lies, we can talk about migration as an underlying problem, a massive problem, and I get what you're saying. I don't disagree. I find myself in a difficult position. I remember sitting here talking to all of you and saying, so I've spoken to a police officer. I've said it already. I'll say it every hour. I'll say it every minute. I remember speaking to a police officer and said, yeah, but in the Rotherham area, they probably didn't want to investigate with the tenacity that they should have for fear of causing social unrest. Benedict, I'm old, right? I don't understand. I don't want to live in a society. I don't recognise my country whereby, irrespective of where you come from or the colour of your skin, you get away with raping an innocent young girl because the authorities believe that that might not look good. Right and wrong. Liberty, imprisonment.
Yeah.
I also will make the point, and she said, didn't she, Yvette Cooper, so much of the data was not collected. Now, there are people, presumably people that Keir Starmer would say are far right, who are already online saying, was this a cover-up? There must be people, and you might agree or disagree, who have known a lot more than they've let on for a long time. But I just consider it probably one of the most embarrassing. I just think it's awful. I can't literally, after an hour and a half, find the words to think that anybody, all those do-gooders who jump up and down and say, oh, you're being anti-Muslim. No, not at all. Not in the slightest bit. In fact, I could do with the Muslim community or the British Pakistani community coming out and saying, we find this deplorable as well, because I haven't heard that today so far.
I mean, you will get a lot of people actually who sotto voce will say these things, but they'll never say them publicly. Why? Because they fear a backlash from the community. Again, why? It brings dishonor.
If you're looking on screen, by the way, we're running the profiles of the gang members on YouTube.
This is the key thing. A lot of people who will privately admit to these things and say it's disgraceful and say something will be done will never say these things publicly because these cultures operate on an honor-based system. If you want to think of an equivalent, think of it a bit like the Italian mafia. It's all about honor. It's about losing face. It's about keeping things within your community. And let's also be clear here. This country never used to have something called an honor killing. That wasn't a thing, but that is now a thing in this country. And again, it's within those communities. The threats that they make against people within their communities who are seen to betray the community, those are very real. You know, this is not.
Yeah, but hold on a second. All that's good. But am I going to say the wrong thing? Probably. Why is that acceptable in a country where it's not bloody acceptable? Why is that allowed to be got away with? How have we got to a point where we are all apologists and a forgiving behaviour, sorry if this sounds wrong, right, that most of us who have lived here all their lives would find abhorrent and unacceptable? I don't understand how that's allowed to happen.
So most of us, if not all of us, I think would actually agree. Certainly, I imagine everybody listening to this programme agrees that the idea that you should turn a blind eye to rape or honour killing, or another thing that doesn't get spoken about enough, which is female genital mutilation, goes on a lot in these sort of communities. Why is it that we should turn a blind eye to this? Well, when they were smaller numbers, these communities were smaller, people turned a blind eye because they didn't want to believe that it was happening, and as you pointed out earlier, it was to do with community relations, cohesion. Just don't talk about it, and eventually these people will just magically become British. Now, it's a much more insidious reason. There are too many people. And actually, our authorities, our police forces, are not equipped to go into these communities. If you
equipped or willing? Equipped or determined enough?
It's both. The numbers of people who live in, take a city like Bradford, for instance, the number of Pakistanis from, say, Kashmir who live in that cities now, it is well into the tens of thousands. And if you would sort of collate that across all of those northern Midland cities, you're talking hundreds of thousands, at least, for each of these individual communities. Let's say that the police go in heavy and they go in hard on a group of people, and those people are able to mobilise. They know that it's coming, and the community rallies round. What then do you have? You have a bit like you had in Leeds in the Hare Hills. You have a riot where actually you have a community where the police physically do not have the numbers. So even if they did have the will...
You're just talking about lawlessness then. Yeah. You're ending up saying that the behaviour that is abhorrent...
Yeah.
We can escape with because the police have neither the numbers or the guts or the, I don't know, the infrastructure to deal with it. In the end, you're talking about bloody lawlessness. But I repeat, is it unfair to say, or is it fair to say, that the colour of your skin, in this instance, is determining how you are being treated if you are a perpetrator? That's wrong.
This is why I've never understood why it is that we have pushed multiculturalism as this great ideal. If you want to take two examples of multiculturalism in Europe, as it really is, you take Eastern Europe in the 30s and you take the Balkans in, say, the 80s. What happened in both of those situations was when law and order broke down, people started killing each other. Actually, in Lithuania and Poland and Ukraine, when the Nazis swept in and took over the governments there, the Nazis were not, in fact, the ones who started rounding up the Jews. It was the locals, because different ethnic groups started to take revenge on each other. And it happened with the Russians as well. It happened towards Romanies. Different Slav groups took aim at each other. That's why, you know, you have such an awkward history in Ukraine between the Ukrainians and the Poles, because different communities started doing the same things to each other. You had that as well in Serbia and in Bosnia. It wasn't just the military. It wasn't just the governments. It was local communities. The lawlessness starts. And this is, you know, it sounds... People don't want to think that it could happen here because this is Britain and we don't really have a history of this sort of thing. But if you import enough people and you don't have the police and you don't have the infrastructure and you don't have the prison cells, you don't have the physical structures in place to deal with your own population, never mind these, why should you be surprised? And this is the thing. We're talking just about one community, let's say the Kashmiri Pakistani community, and their attitude towards white people. But what about their attitude towards Sikhs? What about their attitude
Can
towards...
I ask a question that will probably get me into trouble? What about white people's feelings towards these people who have come to our country and think it's all right to rape young girls? What about... is that the wrong thing to say?
I think one of the major, I genuinely think that this is both a strength and has also been a failing of this country.
Yeah.
This country, as much as people on the left like to tell us that we are evil and the product of empire and everything we do is white culture and it's dreadful, actually fundamentally the British people are among the most tolerant on the planet. It's why so many people want to come here and be
I
British.
don't think I'm going to go to the phone lines with you, but I don't think that's. I think that's in itself an issue. All this, we're the fairest, we're the most moral, we should always do what's right. I genuinely believe we are getting to a point in this country where the British people realise that their voice can be heard and that they are not going to wipe the backside of migrants and people who think they can behave in this way, and that actually it's not far right or racist or out there to say things that actually, you know, I have a relative who would say, oh, this is wrong and this, but sorry, I'm going to say the wrong word. No. For me, right, if you have people in this country who think it's okay to rape young white girls, they shouldn't be in this country. It's as simple as that. You don't mind, do you? Stay there. Laura Jane's in Hampshire. Laura Jane, Benedict Spence and Jeremy Carlin Drive. What you got? Quickly.
Hi. I agree with everything you say about the whole thing. It's just, you can't even begin to say how awful it is. But what I am worried about is that this inquiry is going to be a whitewash, and there are already people, tearing up the trail, and there are already politicians who know full well they were involved and turned a blind eye. And there are many politicians who need the vote of the Muslim community to keep the Labour Party in. And I am fearful that it is going to be a whitewash, and it's anyway going to take years, a bit like the COVID inquiry. I really am even more worried that these young, women now and who've had their lives ruined are never going to get justice.
You know what, Laura Jane, I couldn't agree more. And I'd like to put it to Benedict. And Peter Blexley started this an hour and 20 minutes ago. There are cynics already saying that Keir Starmer in January said the far right thing to give him and his, not him, but to give his, human rights, lefty, whatever friends time. People could cover their tracks. This national inquiry needs to go from top to bottom. But as Peter Blexley said, Benedict, are people going to be able to look themselves in the mirror, scared by the implications perhaps of doing that, and say, yes, this didn't happen, yes, this was ignored? Are they? Because as a society, do we not think that's the right way to behave, or am I being unfair?
I think you're right to be fearful that people will try to use this to draw out, to obfuscate, and to try to bury the process. Lots of people are. They have every reason to want to try, and historically, national inquiries are a very good place, actually, to bury bad news and to come up with certain findings and then say lessons will be learned, and then nothing ever happens because it's, however many tens of millions of pounds later and however many years later. The problem is, sooner or later, if the state is shown to be continuously dysfunctional, covering things up, and the scandals keep getting worse and worse and worse, sooner or later there comes a moment at which the state has nowhere to hide. And I wonder if this is the thing. I just don't think you can hide institutional rape like this, especially when migration is already such a hot topic.
I don't think the British people will allow... I genuinely believe this. Don't know what Laura thinks quickly. I don't think the British people are going to allow this to be whitewashed. I really don't, Laura.
Well, we didn't want the COVID inquiry to be whitewashed, and I'm sorry, but it was. In those days, I would have been a conspiracy theorist. I was going on marches for the
I don't want to talk about
65.
COVID. I don't want to talk about... I'm not being miserable. I'm sick and tired of bloody COVID. I want to talk about this. You believe this could be covered up, or do you think the British people will actually, in the end, say, no. Whether it's the Prime Minister to the left, it doesn't matter. If anybody morally has been complicit in allowing young girls to be raped, they need to be brought to justice, don't they, Laura?
But the point is they've already morally given up their soul, so they don't care. They're not going to suddenly become whiter than white and decide, it's just not going to happen. If you've already sold your soul, you don't get it back.
I'm getting more ashamed of this country by the day. Thank you very much indeed, Laura. You okay to hang on there a sec? Benedict, Miranda is in Cumbria. Miranda, are you on Talk Drive? How you doing?
Hello. My point was that basically, what about the NHS? There will be a paper record in people's notes of girls who went in who were seen by gynecologists, obstetricians, and colorectal surgeons as well, from what Katie Lamb was discussing earlier on. when she was in Parliament, and she gave a detailed account of one girl's experiences. And also GPs as well. There should be a paper record of everybody who dealt with some of these girls, because obviously some girls had babies, some girls probably had miscarriages, and some girls could have had terminations. And that was my point. I think the NHS, they have to record everything.
Do you know, it's a fantastic point, Benedict, because you know, we can sit here and we can say, would the wokerati, would the institutions, would people cover their backs? I've always believed in those sorts of instances that if you look hard enough, you'll find something. I believe Maggie Oliver's right. This goes so deep and has been going on for so long and is such a stain. I personally hope, but I actually believe that this... I don't believe this will be a whitewash. I just feel the British people have turned a corner in terms of understanding that their voices are important. Really do.
I think on this, I think on the subject of medical records, I think those are confidential, so I don't know how it would be that an inquiry could necessarily get a hold of them, unless I suppose people wanted to volunteer them. I'm not an expert on that.
I'm sure a whistleblower surgeon or doctor could say, yes, we were told by this, or I don't know.
But that would mean that person would go to prison for a very, very long time. I think... When it comes, I mean, I know you don't want to talk about COVID, but the point about COVID was it was unprecedented. However, if we're talking about rape, there's a very, very long series of precedents for rape and what the punishments are. If it is seen, I think, publicly for there to be a double standard, perhaps, or people not being deported, especially at the moment when finally a new political party has emerged that is doing very well specifically on this issue, I think it's going to be a lot harder for the two main parties to go, well, you know, what are you going to do? Especially, as I say, when you've got a third party coming along and saying, well, we're going to change this, we're going to do something about this. Even if there is a whitewash in the inquiry, there is now a political outlet, potentially, for people to voice their feelings, to get a new party in power to do something about it.
Well, just to sum it up, obviously Starmer is the king of the U-turn and seems to slime his way through life. You know, I know exactly what he's going to say. You asked for an inquiry, so I wanted to check if there was a good reason. I got Baroness Casey to do it, and then I reacted accordingly. Those comments about anybody who wants this is just climbing on the far right bandwagon. Do you think those will come back and haunt him? They should do.
Oh yes. He's fundamentally really bad at politics, and so is Rachel Reeves. I mean, Rachel Reeves going on Sky yesterday and saying, well, this isn't about people's feelings. When she was asked, would you apologise to the people that were smeared, and say, this isn't about people's feelings. On the one hand, yes, it's not about the feelings of people on Twitter who have been talking about this for a long time. It's about justice. However, how stupid do you have to be to go on national TV as a Labour, frontbencher, the party that cares more about feelings than facts, and say, well, for this very specific issue, we don't care about people's feelings? You're talking about rape victims. What a stupid thing to say.
Unbelievable.
Don't know how it is that this party can continue to just crash through every single potential issue and then try to reverse themselves out.
But this is my point. Sorry, Ray, you'll have to wait a sec. This is my point, and I started the show with this. They spent months, if not years, knowing they were going to be the next government. They seem to be surrounded by How are they so goddamn incompetent that they make... Think about the pensioners. Think about this. Such ridiculous, stupid decisions that the British public will no longer accept at all.
I mean, one day, Jeremy, you and I might be able to have a long conversation about why it is structurally that both major parties are so out of touch and their recruitment processes, how it is that people get to be MPs. That's for another day. But I think it's very clear to most people that what these two major parties have prioritised for years is spin. It's the message, it's not the result. That's actually what they care about. And nowadays, they aren't even that good at it. But that was what it always was. As long as you appear to be on message and you are on top of things, well, then everything
let me tell you, my good friend, because I have to finish there. If spin or being on message, they think they can sell that they've put this, they've swept this under the carpet when 8-year-old girls have been raped. I think they're in for the shock of their lives. Great to have you on as ever. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, 525. If you want to be honest, the only subject people are wanting to talk about, this is because this afternoon Yvette Cooper stood up in the Commons and talked about Baroness Casey, who'd written this report, a damning report, saying that the victims have been let down. saying that there were ongoing grooming gang investigations, that there had been deep-seated institutionalised failures stretching back decades, and she says that even good but misdirected intentions. She said that some data, lots of data, hadn't been collated. She touched on the fact that the Asian and British Pakistani men were involved in this. She talked about how some, if not quite a lot of these rapists, were migrants coming into this country. What do you make of this? I mean, I'm just embarrassed to be British right now. 0344 499 1000. Talk drives on.
Rachel Reeves, all of the cabinet, they go, oh, well, you know, we're reporting on, they've got no answer, because they don't know. But I do. They're going into social houses, they're going into council houses. So British people who have lined up for years to get their social housing, council houses, will have to go to the back of the queue, while these foreigners who broke into our country illegally will go to the top of the queue. That, ladies and gentlemen,
unacceptable.
That is modern Britain.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5:30, Talk Drivers on. 0344 499 1000. Sean says, Jezza, all this bloody government needs to do is to run the clock down on this grooming gangs inquiry. It's only got 4 years, and kick it into the long grass till then, and hey presto, it won't be their problem anymore. Rob Shaw, Jez, I'm worried. I was happy to be called far right from these clowns who run this country, but now, presumably, as they've called an inquiry, they're far right too. Very interesting. Sarah Irvine, that woman makes me sick. Firstly, they deny a need for an inquiry. Presumably she means Yvette Bulls. Now they U-turn massively, probably to try and get voters back. Same tactics as the winter fuel. Why can't they man up? Are you allowed to say that? Probably not. And say, we got it wrong and now we're trying to get it right. We have a bunch of muppets running this country and they're running us into the ground. Sarah is in Stockbridge. Jeff is in the north, in Aberdeenshire. Shares the reason Labour took till now is that they've been burying the evidence and now they think they are in the clear. They are willing to let the inquiry go. A lot of people listening to that will go, come on, mate. I'm not saying I'm not against it. Steve Charlie, do you honestly think anything will come of this inquiry? News just in. 10 tonnes of whitewash has just been ordered by Number 10. Martin Waddington, rape gangs. Where have the NSPCC been in all of this? Has anyone examined the type of people in charge over the last couple of decades? Martin in the fabulous Whitley Bay. Good afternoon to you. Nick. It's simple, Jez. Listen, Starmer hates Britain and he hates British people. He's more interested in the G7 and a photo opportunity. Margaret, Jez, Starmer should now do a U-turn for the farmers. Why should the people of this country put up with this useless prim? We need a change of government, not in 4 years. Well, unfortunately, Margaret, You got 2 Opes, no Ope and Bob Ope, and there you go. I'm watching Jess Phillips, says Michael Roberts, Angela Eagles and our Deputy PM squirming in their seats, listening to the Home Secretary, Michael Hockley. You're absolutely right. Jez, if there is any reason why a Prime Minister should have cancelled a globe-trotting jolly, it's surely this one. Just goes to prove what an absolute dirtbag Starmer is. He's more concerned about travelling the world and having his... God, the people are getting so angry. 87222. Start your message with the word talk on the day that Vivek Cooper stood up in the Commons and said that the victim should never have been let down. There will be a national grooming gangs inquiry. Maggie Oliver has been talking about it. Stations like this have been talking about it forever. When this kicked off in Rotherham, despite other governments being in charge, the police were saying, oh, we don't want to do anything about it because it might cause social division. Today, we know that a majority of these perpetrators are British, Asian and British Pakistani men, right? We are not saying something to create division. We are talking facts. Why aren't the communities from which those people come speaking out? 0344 499 1000 to the phone lines in Wolverhampton. John, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Hello. My name's not actually John, but I am actually from one of those communities. I am Indian myself. And just to see what's going on, like, genuinely, I'm 19, by the way. And when I heard it, I genuinely cried. I cried when I heard what happened. And I don't cry often. It genuinely frustrated me.
Because, as you said, I don't know if people picked up, John's not your name, you're from an Asian community, am I allowed to ask?
Yeah. I'm Sikh. I'm literally Sikh.
You see, my issue, not even an issue, and I'd love to have this conversation. I'm so grateful you called. The fear is, right, that if you say anything, although it's been proven that these were...
I can only... Stop, Jeremy. I can only speak from my own personal experience. I know if this came with, like, this in my own family, I know they would deal with it quite differently. I'm not too aware about how my other people might deal with it, but I know on the Sikh side, like, they're very like firm when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And
you find it abhorrent. You find it abhorrent.
Yeah, absolutely, because this is the thing, and I say this all the time. I say this to my mates because I'm dating a white woman, love her to bits. I've got white friends, I love them to bits. And I say this to them all the time, like, look, if that happens to us, it gives us such a bad name.
Can I ask you a very important question? Hear me out. And it's really difficult, I'm sure, at 19...
Ask away, go ahead.
Can you, without disrespecting any part of, as you said it, other communities, can you explain to a nearly 60-year-old father of 6 who finds this probably the biggest stain on our society, and I am the least racist person in the world, and now hear me out, this is important, why do not leaders in your mind, young man, from the Muslim community, from the British, Pakistan, why don't they come out and be as appalled as you? That's what I don't understand.
I genuinely don't know, and that's the thing that's sickening me the most about it. Yeah. Like, I know if this was happening to our community, as a Sikh, like, we would be hammering people for it. But, like, if it happens to a different community, like, I don't grasp it. No. I can't understand it personally, Jeremy. And this is the thing that annoys me so much. It's like there'll be young men like me today, hearing what's happened on the radio, and they'll be absolutely mortified.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's not the case, and it bugs me because I've got people, like, you know, I've got best mates who've, you know, it's just abhorrent, and I live in Wolverhampton, and Telford's just up the road to me.
Do you know something that's very interesting? And you are...
It horrifies me.
You are... Hear me out. You are wise beyond your years. For me, and I know you share this, and this is the point from your call, there is a difference. Hear me out, please, right? There is a difference between right and wrong. There are behaviours and actions that are so heinous that I don't believe that should allow you to live in a civilised society. And what has happened here is that cultural division, or the fear of it, or a religion, or colour, creed, whatever, has got in the way. To me, and I said at the beginning, and I'm so grateful for your call, I don't care where you come from, I don't care the colour of your skin. If somebody thinks it's acceptable to rape an 18-year-old girl, I don't care where you come from, you should not be living in this civilised society. You should be in the nick or sent somewhere else. I can't be doing with it. And John, favourite call of the day. We love having you on. Thank you so much indeed. It said south to Southampton. See what I did. Paul, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Not too bad, Jesse. Yourself?
Angry?
Yeah. Well,
I've got two things, right? First of all, I sat on a jury of a Pakistani man raping a white woman in a taxi. So I know your anger because I've seen it across a jury, across a courtroom. But when I spoke to Jodie, my question is, why have nobody taken to task the people that allowed this to happen, the chiefs of police in every single county where this took place? They're the people that made the policy.
If you were listening, I don't know when you started listening, we had the amazing Peter Blexley on at the top of the show, and he and I were ranting for a full 45 minutes, and what he said was that he hopes that whether it's councillors, MPs, cabinet ministers, police chiefs, social service workers, whoever, that if it can be proven that people turned a blind eye, hid evidence, just didn't do what they had to do, i.e. committed that crime in public office, that they're brought to task. But the fear, and this has been growing in terms of the calls that have been taken, the fear is, which is understandable, right, is that there will be a whitewash, that it will be an institutionalised cover-up. And I keep going back to it. If we as a society cannot accept that the rape of young girls is so abhorrent that these people should be deported or locked up, if we cannot say that for fear of upsetting certain people, I don't want to be part of it, because in my mind, any scum that does that doesn't deserve to be on the streets. End of. Done. And any police officer, any politician that says, oh, well, you know, no, bog off, seriously, you can go as well. Not right. Not in a civilised society. Not in a million years.
Well, yeah, but my point is a lot of those arrests could have been made earlier.
Yep.
Council workers have got nothing to do with arrests, nor the social workers.
No, I agree.
This is the police. The police chief constables make policy through their National Council of Police Officers garbage.
Let me tell you that I don't disagree with you at all. Pat from Kent, right? What worries me, Jez, is how far up the bleeding ladder does this go? Are there many MPs who are involved? Are there all sorts of people who know? Listen, we appreciate your call, Paul in Southampton. Phones have gone mad. I hope if you are trying, we'll get to you. I promise you it's 20 to 6 almost. If you want to be on, 0344 499 1000. That's the telephone number. You can text me, 87222. Start your message with the word talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Big news on Talk Drive. Maggie Oliver, who has been an absolute voice for these grooming gang victims for years, joins us exclusively in 10 minutes' time. Before that, Stephen Wolfe, migration expert. I just wanted to have you on very briefly, Steve. It's a mad, mad afternoon. Appreciate your time. This, as a father, disgusts me. I'm ranting like crazy. Part of what Yvette Cooper said this afternoon, and I don't lay this totally at Labour's door, is that a large number of these rapists might well be illegal migrants who come into this country and we don't know who they are, which is what you've been saying forever, my friend.
I have, and I've been trying to point out that information that we've got these people who don't share our culture, don't share our values, don't respect women and don't respect children, and have been working together in teams across the countries, of which Maggie Oliver and many, many other women have raised this issue, defended their rights to be left alone and ignored by our politics, our politicians and those in authority. And thankfully, Casey has recognised that there will be an element of this. Not all, we know that, but there is a very important element, Jeremy. And today, I have a sense of kind of, thankfully, some of this battle has been won, but I'm sharing like you. I don't like the idea that many of them are going to be marking their own homework. I hear the word local raised by Yvette Cooper, which puts me in a fear that this is not going to be a truly national kind of report that is going to have the ability to draw on evidence from every country, every part of the country, bring in the data so that we can watch it.
How frightening was that when she said, I warned in January that the data collection we'd inherited from previous governments on ethnicity was completely inadequate. It was only collected on 37% of suspects. Baroness Casey's audit confirms that ethnicity data is not recorded for 2/3 of grooming gang perpetrators. And frankly, it's ridiculous and helps no one that this basic information is not collected. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but already I've had people on this show, Stephen, saying, so why wasn't it collected? Is this part of a bigger thing, which is we don't want to upset different divisions and worry about social cohesion? Because to me, you can strip back colour, religion, creed and whatever. I keep saying it to the point where I'm going to headbutt the next wall that I see. The rape of a girl by whoever, whatever the colour, they're vermin. And there's a really great quote here from Daz. Chaz, I just wonder if the guilty vermin will be convicted on live TV and jailed within 24 hours like the supposed far-right rioters. That's absolutely spot on, isn't it?
Absolutely. They are vermin. They disgust me. They disgust ordinary people, quite rightly. And if you're not disgusted by this, then what are you doing in the jobs?
Yeah.
What were you doing in the police? What were you doing in the civil service? And my concern about this is just like the Post Office inquiry and every other inquiry, the reason the Labour have been forced upon this are people who have been campaigning for it, the concern in America by Elon Musk, Rupert Lowe with his own gang inquiry, which is bringing in vital evidence and being put out there, is that they want to take control of the agenda. They want to control it. They want to push it down, suppress it, and no one will get the just desserts they do. No one will be fired. No one will lose their MBE or OBE. No one will lose their pensions. I want to see real justice for those people who were ignored by those who did exactly what you've just said, Jeremy. For the sake of not embarrassing themselves or embarrassing other people over race, they ignored the fact these were children, girls being raped. I don't care who you are. You rape a child, go away. There's a lot more I would say. But
go to jail or be deported if you're absolutely nailed on. Steve, you know, we love having you on. It's a real quick one today, but you absolutely speak for all of us. Thank you so much indeed. 5:45. We're live across the UK. The voice, the continued voice about these victims has been one woman and one woman at the forefront for years. Maggie Oliver, next on Talk Drive.
I think at the moment the government has been right to send additional assets into that part of the world, so fighter aircraft and the refuelling aircraft that they need, because what Iran has said to date is that the bases that we have over there may, in their opinion, be legitimate targets for them. So we have in Oman, the UAE, and at Akrotiri in Cyprus, important bases there, and it's right that we take those actions as a precautionary measure to defend those.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6. So, at the weekend, the Prime Minister bowing to pressure and announcing that our government would in fact have a full national inquiry. Today, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, said victims should never have been let down for so long. Let's just remind ourselves of her apologising on behalf of herself and the government. Have a listen.
On behalf of this and past governments and the many public authorities who let you down, I want to reiterate an unequivocal apology for the unimaginable pain and suffering that you have suffered and the failure of our country's institutions through decades to prevent that harm and keep you safe. But words are not enough. Victims and survivors need action. The reforms I've set out today will mean the strongest action any government has taken to tackle child sexual exploitation, more police investigations, more arrests, a new inquiry, changes to the law to protect children, and a fundamental overhaul of the way organisations work to support victims and put perpetrators behind bars.
The strongest voice on this for years and years. I'm delighted to be joined by the legend that is Maggie Oliver. Maggie, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm shattered, actually, Jeremy, but I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Thank you, sweet. Can I say thank you? And I mean it. I don't think I don't think I've been this wound up. I think it's probably because I'm a father of 4. I mean, we can talk from a political angle, the screeching U-turn. We've talked about people already saying that the inquiry will be a whitewash. They're saying, you know, people will cover their tracks. I don't understand, Mags, and I never have. Whoever, politicians, institutions, police, council workers, if anybody has been responsible for covering up one of the most heinous things that can happen, which is the rape of a child, these people should be locked up. Fact.
I agree with every word, and we've spoken over the years, Jeremy. You know, the one thing I would say is that I don't trust anybody, really, because of my experience on this journey. But I met Baroness Casey, came to me, and she got in touch with me in February. I met her for a few hours, and we talked about everything I'd seen, and she really listened, and I felt that she got it. So when she came back to me and asked me to pull together a group of survivors from all around the country, I thought, I believe that this is going to be the truth, because otherwise why would she come to me to choose the survivors? So she came to Manchester. I brought survivors from all over the country, and they told their stories to her. This report reflects some of that, but when I hear Yvette Cooper today apologising, I do not know how they sleep at night. They are hypocrites. They have been dragged kicking and screaming to this place. And this isn't a party political point, Jeremy, because the Conservatives are equally negligent for decades. And today, coincidentally, but I have a legal team that today have delivered a pre-action letter to the Home Secretary. I'm taking them to a judicial review, initially to implement the 20 existing recommendations of the previous National Abuse Inquiry, which was actually a grooming gangs. So we've got an announcement today of another statutory inquiry, and I don't deny or want to deny victims and survivors that opportunity to be heard. I don't need another inquiry.
No.
I do not need to wait another 7 years to tell me what I already know, that victims and children have been failed on a monumental scale. It's a national disgrace.
Can I...
And even... Sorry, Jeremy, I've got so much to say.
No,
Just interrupt me.
how high do you think this goes, Maggie? How high?
To the top. As I said in January, you know, Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions when I worked on Rochdale. He authorised a man, a 40-odd-year-old man, who got a 13-year-old child pregnant where we had a fetus, where we had DNA. That man was not even charged with rape. So Baroness Casey is saying that it should be statutory rape. Any child... It should be rape. The CPS decided to charge him with conspiracy. We had a fetus. We had DNA. We knew he was responsible. He was out of prison in just over 3 years. I could go on all week about the failures, but these were not mistakes. They were deliberate. It was neglect of duty. How
do you think? I mean, you and I spend our time shaking our head. How do, whether they're politicians, whoever they are, police officers, how do these people, I don't know if you've got kids, I've got 4 daughters, for Christ's sake. I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I mean, when they said to me, Starmer in January came out and he was going, this is people jumping on the far right bandwagon, which he did with Southport. All you do at 10 Downing Street is go upstairs and look at your 14-year-old, as I said earlier, who's doing a GCSEs and think, if that had happened to my daughter at 8, I can honestly tell you, and Ryan will probably push the button, I would serve time if somebody did that to one of my kids, and I don't give a toss who doesn't like that, and I don't understand why that isn't just part of every person. It's so abhorrent, and then they excuse it. I mean, let's talk about the Asian heritage. She talked about that, and British Pakistani men. You know this. You told me the police in Rotherham and other areas said, we don't want to do anything too strong in case it upsets people. So what? Raping a kid's all right if you've got a different skin colour? Abhorrent, Maggie. Abhorrent.
Yeah, it's shocked. That's why I resigned from the police. That's why I started my own charity, the Maggie Oliver Foundation, because I'm gathering evidence today. We are of things that are going on today. This hasn't stopped. But the tiptoeing around, we need proper data. I spoke to and wrote to the Home Office in 2013 to say we needed to collect the data, ethnicity, religion, culture. They have wriggled every step of the way.
Why?
We do not have...
Why?
Because they did not want to grasp this nettle. And it's not Asian grooming gangs. They are predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. And all child abuse comes from lots of different directions. We will never do away with it, whether it's a priest in the Catholic Church or a football coach or Jeffrey Epstein, Jimmy Savile, it doesn't matter to me. But if you have the evidence, you prosecute. And if you get a pattern of behaviour where Muslim men are targeting very vulnerable young white children, you grasp that nettle. You don't worry about upsetting the political or the racial bandwagon. They are paedophiles. And unfortunately, by ignoring it for decades, we have allowed it to grow. And actually, all I'm saying is that the law should be equal. And if we have the evidence, we charge that man with rape and they go to prison for a long time. And what has happened is that people have turned a blind eye. They're not mistakes. And even last week, Jeremy, Dominic Cummings is saying that the cabinet tried to prevent Andrew Norfolk from publishing that report in 2010 when I was on Rochdale. But you know what, Jeremy? Why has it taken him 15 years to talk about that? That is the problem. They see it. They knew it. I went to the Chief Constable. I've talked to the IOPC, the Home Office, Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel. I've lost count, telling them exactly what Baroness Casey has said in her report. I am grateful to her. But the problem is we have another national inquiry. The devil is in the detail. Who is going to lead it? What are the terms of reference?
You should lead it. You should lead it.
Now, I have, the judicial review delivered to Yvette Cooper today, that will force them to put the ICSA recommendations. They can't use pain compliance on vulnerable children anymore. We need a minister for children in the cabinet We need mandatory recording of ethnicity that is the same throughout the country.
That was, we haven't got long, but that was appalling to me, that only 37% of the data has been collected. And that buys into that theory that you told me before, that the police and authorities don't want to give the impression that people that have come into this country and find that behaviour acceptable. But forgive me, Mags, you're far more intelligent than me. It's so abhorrent, it's so heinous. That's not going to be allowed in this country. No. If I'm in charge, you're going to be deported or you're going to prison forever, and I'm going to throw away the freaking key. And I'm not even having a debate with you. You cannot blight a young girl's life forever. How can anybody in any position of authority think that that is acceptable? And if it has been an institutionalised cover-up, that's an absolute stain on the United Kingdom, isn't it?
It is an institutional cover-up. Jeremy, but the other thing, and I know you haven't got much time, the other thing, announcing that they're going to get the NCA to do all these inquiries. Really? You're not going to do that without more resources, without more investment. These are empty words. It's, smoke and mirrors. It is not going to happen. It's a PR exercise. And I'm sorry, I was naive 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I am not naive anymore. We've got, I'm in my charity, we have got cases that are waiting 4 and 5 years for trial. There are not enough police officers. There are not enough skilled experience because they're leaving in their droves. We need a radical overhaul, possibly even a royal commission into policing. We need social workers and police who don't look at a child in a car with 4 56-year-old men who's drunk and take the child out and tell the parents to get a grip because they're out of control. You take action with those men.
Do you think thing, like I think, that however depressing it is to think this has been an institutionalised cover-up, that the British people have started to understand in the last couple of years, with migration certainly at the forefront, that their voice can make a difference? He's U-turned on the pensioners thing. I think this is a seismic moment. I don't think the people are going to accept a whitewash, Mags. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree, Jeremy. I think this is, public pressure in the end is what brings change. My role in all of this journey has been to educate the country, to show the country, and the country know, the country, the public see it, hear it, know it, and want action. This is a U-turn by the government, not because they want to, not because they want to do anything, but they know that the time is up. And they know that we are going to see riots in the street if they don't get a grip of this. So the problem is, who's going to lead the inquiry? What's the terms of reference? 3 months ago, we were far-right extremists. Keir Starmer won't have changed his opinion. Politicians will not have changed their opinions. But public pressure is going to push through change. So I do think it's coming. Not fast enough for all those kids who have been raped, but hopefully for future generations.
Can I thank you again, not only for coming on, but for absolutely, as a father of 4 girls, everything you do. We're totally supportive. We love you. Maggie Oliver on Talk Drive. Thank you so much indeed. It's almost 6 o'clock. What a show. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. News at 6 is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Friends, what is it? Just gone 6 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Talk Drive for Monday the 16th of June on the day, well, the day after the Prime Minister, who has sort of wandered off to G7, he announced that he was bowing to pressure and there was going to be a national inquiry into these grooming gangs. I call them rape paedophile gangs, but there we go. This afternoon we saw the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, standing up in the Commons and admitting that victims have been let down, that there's institutional problems, data hadn't been collated, that there was a problem with Asian heritage and British Pakistani men stretching back decades, saying that this was unacceptable. You looked at the Labour front bench and they were squirming. For me, this isn't political, by the way, because the Tory government were in power for 14 years. This is, if there is any way that there is institutionalised cover-ups on this, it is an absolute stain and disgrace to our society. John from Carmarthen, I listened to Mrs. Balls. All I heard in a whiny Dawn French voice was, it was a terrible thing, but it wasn't us, it was the Tories. They're really trying to deflect any responsibility. He says, and I think he's dead right, everybody needs to look at themselves. The one thing that's come up from all of your calls and your messages is, so there's going to be a national inquiry, but if this is institutionalised, is there going to be an institutionalised cover-up? Because presumably, whether it's police officers or chief constables or politicians at council level or national level, whether it's, I don't know, social workers, if this has been allowed to happen for so long, I repeat, it's an absolute stain on the United Kingdom. I'm delighted. My next guest now, I can't wait to get his opinion. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
I am okay, thank you very much. All things considered, a very good evening. And yes, I've just come from the chamber listening to the Home Secretary. And I have to tell you, the most extraordinary thing was the agreement of all the Labour MPs who stood up and congratulated the Home Secretary, saying how pleased they were there was a national inquiry. These are the same Labour MPs that just months ago said how pleased they were that there wasn't a national inquiry, it wasn't necessary, and actually voted against a Tory amendment to have a national inquiry. The pure hypocrisy, deceit and lies of these people absolutely, I mean, it just beggars belief. Lee Anderson and I were just shell-shocked sitting where
Can I ask you from? I don't disagree with you. I know we've got a slight problem with your screen. And, oh, you're back. I just want to start it in a. I completely get it. I saw the Labour front bench squirming. But if there is any way, Richard, that this goes as deep or as high as people believe, this isn't just the useless Keir Starmer who U-turns yet again. This is institutionalised. We just had Maggie Oliver on, who has been a lone voice, lost a career, has been absolutely slaughtered for years and has just fought such a brave battle. I don't understand. Forgive me if you don't know. Have you got daughters?
I've got one daughter, yes.
I said, when Starmer in January came out and said, and I quote, you know, oh, this is people jumping on the far-right bandwagon, all I'd have done at number 10 was gone upstairs where my daughter was doing her homework, looked at her in the eyes and thought, do you know what? That could have happened to you 6 years ago and your life would have been blighted. I don't care about anybody's political persuasion in this. As a father, this is an abhorrent stain on our society. And if it goes as deep, Richard, and as far as people say, I don't believe society, I don't believe this country will allow this to go away. I think this is a massive moment for all of us.
It really is. And Lee Anderson stood up and recommended that the same Maggie Oliver should lead that inquiry. I was a bit disappointed that they haven't got someone in mind. I was also disappointed when I asked the Home Secretary how long this national inquiry would take. I said, I think the British people would like it to be done and dusted within 2 years. They're talking about 3 years. And I did then ask her whether she would apologise on behalf of the Prime Minister for when he smeared and labelled any of us who called for a national inquiry. He called us extremists and aligning ourselves with the far right. Now, whilst no such apology was forthwith from the Home Secretary, I have to say that they did feel very, very uncomfortable. And it is a significant climb down. There's an important piece of information you may not have picked up, Jeremy, which is that the Home Secretary admitted the government was given this Louise Casey report 10 days ago.
Wow.
That means that they sat on it, read it, panicked, worked out what to do, and then said, well, what we must do is wait for the Prime Minister to leave the country before we agree that there has to be a national inquiry, so that that reduces the pressure on him to come to the House himself, which led me to conclude, and indeed I put out on socials, the Prime Minister is a coward.
Well, he's run away. What's very interesting, and I will make it political now, because I've talked from a moral point of view, Reform has made such a noise, so many waves on things, and I say this with my hand on my heart, you know me, common sense, things that the British public are concerned about. Immigration. No, we're not being racist, we're talking about things that matter. The farming community, pensioners. Can you explain to me from a political point of view your response to people, in their hundreds, by the way, who have said to me already, the reason he said what he said in January about everybody being far right was to give them time to cover their tracks. I don't believe he wants an inquiry at all. But this, I mean, the hypocrisy and not being able to even understand how people are going to feel so strongly. What does it say about a man's judgment that he went, oh, we don't need that, we don't need that? People will tell you, Richard, and I'm sure you know this already, that this isn't about morality in Keir Starmer's mind. This is about losing the Muslim vote and losing to independent Muslim-standing candidates, as they lost 5 seats, including Jonathan Ashworth, during the election. You know the score. And that this man, our Prime Minister, could be accused of putting victims behind political success or political whatever, survival. What do you say to that?
Oh, I think there's no doubt that there is a genuine fear amongst many levels of the Labour Party ranks, councillors, council leaders, some of whom, by the way, have become and are sitting members of Parliament, as to what might be uncovered and whether or not in some way they knew about things and at best didn't do anything, at worst may possibly have deliberately been involved in some form of cover-up. So there is a real fear there. There is an electoral fear, but I think those are all part of it. But I just think the Prime Minister has got woeful judgment on these things, because you look at the U-turns, their judgment on the winter fuel allowance was completely wrong, and they've U-turned, and their judgment on this was completely wrong against all common sense. And so they've been forced into a U-turn by, essentially, I think, by public pressure from the British people, from political pressure, and I think because Baroness Casey is clearly a very strong individual, and I think whilst it may not have been her original expectation to recommend this, I think when she went through and looked into it in whatever detail she could in the time frame, I think she was left with no alternative.
But I think that's morally the point, isn't it? That I mean, I said it, almost shouting it for 2 hours. To me, I don't care about the colour of your skin, your religion, I don't give a damn. What I care about is that we are seemingly in a society, Richard Tice, that has either swept this under the carpet, or we're not going to bother because that's just the way it is, or these are working class girls. It doesn't matter to me. There's a difference between right and wrong. And the people that have perpetrated and raped young girls, if they're illegal migrants, which we'll talk about in a sec, they should be deported instantly, and everybody else should be thrown in jail. That was another part of Casey's report today, saying that there is proof that a number of these perpetrators are illegal migrants who are in our country without any tagging, without any knowledge of who they are, carrying out crime, and in this case, rape. Again, exactly what you guys at Reform have been saying for months. Not far right. Fact.
And we should not, sadly, forget that this horrific activity continues to this day and beyond. And it continues because of the failures of various authorities over a couple of decades to confront the difference between right and wrong, regardless of who you are, where you've come from, the colour of your skin, and whatever faith you may or may not practice. And I just think that the gut instinct, the British people know exactly what's gone on here. There's been gutless cowardice on multiple levels. at police authorities, at local councils, at social agencies, within children's care. And yeah, it's been a catastrophic failure. But you know, at the end of the day, until we get to grips with this, I fear that this will continue.
It's really interesting as well. Loads of people, which will make you, I think, love your reaction. People are saying that there are many reasons why he's suddenly had to do another screeching U-turn. Yes, Baroness Casey, but also Reform, of course, have started to take control of quite a few local councils, and it goes without any shadow of a doubt that I'm sure that a new Reform council, if they came across anything to do with this, would be shouting it quite rightly from the rooftops, because you've been very vocal about the problems that illegal migration causes, and you've been very supportive of Maggie Oliver and the work she's done to try and get these victims just the answers that they deserve, pal.
And I think that is part of the additional pressure. The 10 councils we control, we don't yet know the extent to which what may or may not have happened within some of them, but certainly there are some towns within some of those councils where there are grave concerns, and we were obviously going to, in fact, we were talking about it literally last week, about what we could do collectively as a group to progress investigations, what statutory power we would or would not have. And that's the key to this, is the statutory ability to call and compel witnesses to come and give evidence under oath. And that's the absolute crux of it. So, look, we've all got to now get stuck in. We need the chair to be announced soonest.
Any idea who you think that might be? Who would you like it to be? I'd like
Well, as I say, Lee Anderson recommended Maggie Oliver. I don't know whether that's something she would or would not feel that she was able to do. Whoever it is has obviously got to be completely impartial, beyond reproach.
I think she'd find it. She told us just 10 minutes ago that she served the Home Office with the judicial review this afternoon. So I don't think she's going to be. I don't think she's going to be impartial.
The point is, it has to be someone beyond reproach, and it may be, if one can find someone rapidly, that one should look overseas. You know, sometimes we haven't got all the answers. Sometimes international experts can come to a situation with a fresh face, completely untainted by anything political. But I also just want it to get on with it, and I think they've got to be ambitious. I think they have got to aim for 2 years, not 3 years. You can run multiple sort of subsections of the overarching inquiry in order to get there faster. We can't wait 3 years that in typical civil service style becomes 4 and 5. And
I think you're right. I think you're right also very much about the British people. And I think Reform should take a round of applause for this, because I don't think that politicians for years, I think they've treated the British people with contempt, and I think the British people have allowed that to happen. I think the British people got very fed up with the expense scandal and all that, but I think then the British people suddenly thought, oh, actually, this is getting worse in my country, and actually, I have a right. I mean, if I asked you this, right, is this an embarrassing day for the United Kingdom in your opinion? Because it is, in my opinion. It's an absolute disgrace.
It's one, I'm afraid, of many embarrassing days and weeks as this story rumbles on and on. And it's unbelievable. It's a 2-decade humiliation of everything that the establishment and who we are and what we are, what we stand for. That sense of law and order, of British values and tradition and discipline, it's all out the window with this particular nightmare. And so it actually shames us all, shames all people in any form of authority who was aware of this. I mean, 2 decades it's a generation, give or take.
And you say that like we've been talking about it for ages, but you say that in a sort of throwaway way. 20 years of I don't know, police officers, politicians, council workers, social workers, people in the NHS who would have seen these girls not feeling either brave enough or committed enough. I just know what I would do if anybody did that. And I make another point, which again, some people don't like, but there we go. That's just me being honest. We're not going to say that all of these people are of Asian heritage or British Pakistani men, but a large number are. Why are we not hearing, Richard Tice? Oh, lo and behold, he's going to say it again, Jezza. Why are we not hearing from those communities about their abhorrence about something that has no place in my society? Why the absolute stonewall silence?
Primarily because I think a combination of the vast majority of decent, law-abiding, hard-working people of the Muslims within this country are as horrified as the rest of us.
Absolutely.
But the key issue is that they don't have a proper unifying voice of leadership. And this dreadful entity called the Muslim Council of Britain that quite rightly the government doesn't talk to and shouldn't listen to. That's sort of, I mean, that's about the best there is, but it's not good at all. It's a very political entity. So that is a serious problem, frankly, is that there's a lack of people speaking up in positions of leadership from that faith, and I think that is a problem. And
It is a nationwide scandal, and you can only hope, can't you, that all the work that so many of you have done, Maggie, Oliver, you guys, it just that. I really struggle sometimes if people go on about politics. It's just kids. It's young girls, Richard, being raped. It's appalling.
But the degree to which, I mean, the first journalist who broke this story, who passed away just a few months ago, Andrew Norfolk from the Times, taken from us so young. You know, when he broke this story, I mean, he was called the most appalling names: a racist, a bigot, and smeared. Dreadful stuff, as were sitting MPs at the time who tried to call it out. So, I mean, the pressure from the establishment to turn a blind eye on this because it might upset the sort of cause of mass immigration and that it might upset certain ethnicities just is such a gutless, feeble failure at every level. It just drives one.
But you know what doesn't drive me mad? I'm so with you, mate. What doesn't drive me mad, just to finish, is exactly what we've already talked about. I don't know why I feel this, but I do feel the British people have found their voice. Be it, I don't know, maybe because Reform finally, there's a party that's offering something different than the Uniparty, up and down and jobs for the boys and jobs for the girls and blah. Maybe it is that. I mean, I remember Nigel and you being called racist. I remember us doing something on this show where after the South, everybody that took to the streets in the Southport riots is a far right. I mean, what did he say in January? This is jumping on the far right bandwagon. I mean, honestly, he as a Prime Minister to me is the biggest failure we've ever had. But I just hope, and I'm sure you'd agree, that whatever happens, that this is done robustly. Lots of people texting the show saying, now this will be a whitewash. I don't think the people allow that anymore. I think we're past that, don't you?
I think that we've now got sufficient people, elected MPs from Reform and councillors from Reform. So we will do our very, very best to make sure that this is not a whitewash. We will keep a very, very close eye on it.
And of course, the other bit of news is it's going to be warm weather for the next 2 weeks, so even more migrants will come into this country. Fact, absolute fact. Doesn't get any better. Richard.
The only thing you can do is pick up and take back. And until that we do that as a nation, this carries on. Another shameful episode of gutless leadership.
Apparently Starmer forced to beg Macron to stop migrants coming the other day. Can you do more to stop the boats? Royal Navy, that's all I'm saying. Listen, mate, really appreciate it. I know you've had a long day. Thank you so much indeed. Deputy Chairman, or even Leader, of Reform UK, Richard Tice, MP for Boston and Skegness. His thoughts on the seismic news today. At the weekend, before he scuttled off to the G7 summit because he likes having his stupid photo taken, our Prime Minister said, yes, there will be a full national inquiry into the grooming gangs. Having denied it, having called anybody who called for it back in January a right-wing enthusiast, has bowed to pressure. Baroness Casey wrote this damning report today saying that these victims have been let down, that it's institutionalised problems, be it the police, but all over. these people have been wrong and that there were large numbers of Asian heritage and British Pakistani men who were responsible for this, and something needs to be done. It needs to be a full-range national inquiry. Labour scampering around, the Tories also, 14 years. What the hell did you do? What have we got? It's 6:22. Loads to talk about in the next 38 minutes. Where has this show gone today? 0344 499 1000. You would talk drive.
Rachel Reeves, all of the cabinet, they go, oh, well, we're reporting on, they've got no answer, because they don't know. But I do. They're going into social houses, they're going into council houses. So British people who have lined up for years to get their social housing, council houses, will have to go to the back of the queue, while these foreigners who broke into our country illegally will go to the top of the queue. That, ladies and gentlemen,
unacceptable.
That is modern Britain.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:25 in a minute. Well done, the team again. Robbie Moore MP, the Conservative for Keighley and Ilkley, who has been campaigning for an inquiry into the grooming gangs since 2019, because it happens, some part of it near his constituency. Loads of you, honestly, if you've messaged or tried to call, I'm sorry, Becca, this isn't a 2-decade problem, Jez. It's been going on 30 years since I was a teenager. Everyone locally knew and nothing was done. Martin Smith, surely the time has arrived for a vote of no confidence in this government. Keep wishing, mate. That's not happening. Chloe's in Hampshire. Jess Phillips' silence is absolutely bloody deafening, isn't it? Did you see the witches of Eastwick squirming on the front? Did you see them? Did you see old Angela and Jess? And they just sat there like that, tight-mouthed. Yeah, I thought you were into what's right for young... Yeah, don't get me started. Neil from Darlington, Maggie Oliver, what an outstanding lady, Jez. I would love to see her stand up and question Keir Starmer. I would pay good money to watch that. No, I've just seen pictures of him walking into the G7 summit in Canada, traipsing after Donald Trump, looking like a lapdog, and there are girls being raped in this country, and you've scuttled off, you... Oh, don't start. Carol's in Shoreham by the Sea. Nice. I love Maggie Oliver and what she's achieved. She should have been on the King's birthday honours list. Here. She's done so much to help these poor kids and deserves recognition more than most. Keep pushing, Jeremy. Keep pushing. I'm not having a baby, love. Somebody in Bridget, Joe. Maggie Oliver to lead the national inquiry. Yes, but if you are just saying that, don't know if you heard the news. Max told us. Max. She's actually served the Home Secretary with a judicial inquiry today, which basically means she has no confidence in the result of the inquiry before it starts. That's great. Hi, Jeremy. Great programme. Very pleased rape gangs are getting shown up for what they are, but again, scared it will be blown over. I was emailing my local MP over this 10 years ago, but there is one corporation that should be called out. The BBC have never given it the... Honestly, spot on. The BBC. Steve's in Cambridge. Please tell Maggie how grateful people in this country are for her consistent work on pushing this subject for so long. Jez, says Glenn in Colchester. The Labour Party has called the inquiry now because they know reform will soon take control of local councils and will not leave a stone unturned. Bradley, Maggie Oliver's lead the inquiry. She won't... No, you can't do that. Mary, Starmer has only decided now to have a full inquiry because he's given him time to cover up the truth. Clive, in Solihull, the posh part. Starmer the Harmer. Latest U-turn is nothing to do with children being raped, in my opinion. It's more to do with votes, with being terrified of the rise of reform and maybe realising that normal citizens are sick and tired of being lied to the phone lines. We'll go to Rotherham. No, we're not. We're going to Beckingham, nearly. Patricia, you're on Talk Drive. Couple of minutes. What you got?
Hello, Jeremy. I was just saying, is this correct that the Prophet Muhammad's wife was only 9 years...
Sorry, darling, it cut out there. What did you say? Apologies. Can you just say again? Sorry.
Was it correct that the Prophet Muhammad's wife was only 9 years of age when he married her?
I don't know, darling. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's not something that I'm going to have a discussion about. The truth of the matter is this inquiry today is a disgrace. How did that... Listen, let's move on. 6:28. Robbie Moore, MP for Keighley and Ilkley, I should say, has campaigned... Great man. Shadow Farming Minister's campaigned for an inquiry into the grooming gang since 2019. Robbie joins us now. Robbie, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
We've talked before about how important this is. I've tried to control myself for 2.5 hours, and I want to put to you what I've put to Richard Tice, to Peter Blexley, to Maggie Oliver. Before we get political, you know, yes, he's bowed to pressure and she's standing up saying victims have been let down. Do you believe, without over-egging this, that this is an institutionalised cover-up in the biggest sense of the word and goes far higher up than any of us imagine? Because, Robbie, this is my point. If this has been going on for 2 decades, this is a stain. It's an embarrassing day for the United Kingdom. I don't care, I mean, in my opinion, the colour of your skin or where you come. I don't care. If you think it's all right to rape an 8-year-old girl, you have no place in my society. That's how I feel today.
Absolutely, you have no place in society whatsoever. And indeed, this is a national scandal and is probably one of the biggest institutional failures that not only the British state, whether it's national government or local government, but any organisation that has not called this issue out for what it is and has not dealt with this issue, that has had safeguarding responsibilities, needs to hang their head in shame. And I only hope that the Home Secretary is going to be strong enough in the powers that she is awarding through today's announcement to hold those very organisations, whether it's a local government like Bradford Council in my region, or dare I say those responsible for our policing or those that have had safeguarding responsibilities.
And you wouldn't mind me saying you wouldn't mind me saying this within the context of what Baroness Casey said. She touched upon Asian heritage. She touched on British Pakistani men. She touched upon illegal migrants. There will not just be people at local level in councils and police. There might well be politicians higher up the chain who have turned a blind eye. When you talk about institutional, and I'm not, Robbie, we're friends. But this isn't just a year. This has been going on through 14 years of Tory rule. And I believe that if anybody has turned a blind eye, if this is just the middle and upper classes turning the blind eye to working, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's a group of people who think, oh, well, if we highlight the problems that people who have come into this country and are carrying out things that we say that, then immigration's... Any of that, I would absolutely expect those people to be dragged to the inquiry. But many people who phone this show are saying, you know, oh, it's going to be a whitewash. The only reason he's been dragged to doing this is because reform are taking hold of councils. And because, like me, many people who listen to this think that the British people have suddenly realised their voice works.
Well, absolutely. Look, it was a predecessor of mine, Anne Cryer, who was actually a Labour MP that held the seat of Keighley that I'm now lucky enough to represent, who actually was one of the first to blow the lid off this issue way back between 97 and 2010. And even her Labour government at the time just refused to even do anything about it. Indeed, she was effectively called a racist by her own party. And dare I say, this has been a systematic failure by all administrations for a significant long
Why,
period.
Robbie? Why? You've campaigned. Why? Why has it been covered up in your mind?
Well, it really worries me that A, politicians have relied on votes coming in. B, politicians have been frightened of being called a racist, and that has not allowed a sensible conversation to take control of this issue.
Can I ask you let me ask you a question, because you've always been really good and really open. You've admitted the mistakes that your party's made. Do you, as a politician, right? If you knew, or in the position you're in, and you've called for this, would you be concerned about being called a racist if you knew fundamentally that you were protecting the rights of young white 8-year-old girls who were being raped systematically? Would you care if you were called a racist? Because that's not racism. To me, that's morally doing the right thing.
No, it would not worry me at all. And the reason why it wouldn't, because I know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are too many politicians. And dare I say, I'm seeing this and experiencing this within the Bradford district right now, because our leader of Bradford Council, and indeed the West Yorkshire Mayor, is not advocating to have more openness and more transparency on this issue across the Bradford district, and indeed have been pushing back on having a local inquiry or indeed a national inquiry on this issue since day one, and not getting behind my campaign. Look, as you quite rightly say, this is a difference between right and what's wrong. And if any individual, regardless of political colour, regardless of what level of authority that they hold, have been deemed to be covering this issue up, they absolutely need to lose their job. Secondly, if they have been involved in any criminal activity whatsoever, and anybody else, convictions must follow. And what I really want to see from this inquiry is that it's boots on the ground. This is not an inquiry that's led from Westminster, led from London. This needs to be out in those local areas, like mine in Keighley, in Bradford, to absolutely get to the bottom and get to grips on this absolute heinous crime, so we can install trust back in those organisations.
It's really interesting. I had a text earlier which I wanted to put to you. I've deleted it now, but the main premise was so, and I am not at this point condoning the far-right thugs. So there were far-right thugs that took to the streets after the Southport riots. But overnight, our Prime Minister, we had no police, no court space and no prison space. And overnight, there was this sort of public rounding up. Everybody was deemed to be far-right if they disagree with anything the government did, and people were put in prison for daring. They were called far-right. Why, in the name of the Lord, are many people saying, why are we not able to round up people who think it's acceptable to rape young girls and not do exactly the same? And the reason for that is this fear. I was told this by Rotherham Police 2-3 years ago. Guy said to me, off the record, here's the thing. We probably weren't as robust as we should have been in the process because we were scared of social unrest. For me, Robbie, that says, and I'm not racist, there's not a racist bone in my body, that says that if you come to this country and you commit what I call heinous crimes, you can be forgiven those because you're new to this country. But Lucy Connolly is the prime example. What Lucy Connolly wrote after the Southport riots online was extremely bad and wrong. But rather than make her serve 31 months in jail for hurty words, I would have thought that her community service would have been spending time with the Muslim community and understanding how bad her words were and how unfortunate they were. No, she's languishing in jail, but we have illegal migrants who might well be rapists. We have all sorts of people who can use left-wing lawyers under the ECHR and stay in this country. And I do, because you're one of the few Tories that you listen, and I think it's fantastic. I honestly believe the British people are no longer going to be fed and accept this BS much longer. I genuinely believe that, and I'm not, that's just my opinion, but I do think we're reaching quite an important point. I really do.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not that they're not going to accept it. I don't think they're accepting it right now. And that is absolutely the crucial point, because if anyone comes to this country, they need to be living by our core values right now, not we having to adapt to theirs. That is absolutely the key thing of having absolutely a system, a community that works. So what I really want to see from this national inquiry is areas like Bradford, like Keighley, to have a focus on. We've not had that reporting that's come out from the Home Secretary today. So my campaign continues. I'm getting my local authority, which is Labour-run, are telling me that they don't want an inquiry. The West Yorkshire Mayor is also, who is responsible for West Yorkshire Police, is also saying she doesn't want a local inquiry.
Why would she? Why would she say that when there are? Why would she say that when there are young girls that have been raped and the national government is saying there needs to be one? Why would she say that? How is she serving her constituents?
Well, as a matter of fact, that what they are relying on previously is that we would learn absolutely nothing new. Now, that frustrates me immensely, because what I want to see from an inquiry is convictions that follow, job losses if that is the case, and where there's been those that have had that safeguarding responsibility that have not done their job properly. And actually, most importantly, through achieving those two things, we need to install trust back in to our organisations, with those victims, with those survivors that have lost trust in those that shouldn't be there to look after.
I get that. A couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. You've been really kind. Do you think that Starmer... I'm not trying to be unfair here, but do you think that he was surprised by the breadth of criticism and desire for action in the Baroness Casey report? Do you think, I mean, we've heard rumours that they've known for 10 days. Do you think that he always knew he was going to get that and he was buying time, or do you think he was fundamentally shocked at what he read?
I really just do not know what this Prime Minister stands for. We've seen U-turns after U-turns, and we have seen him just take completely different positions to what he previously announced before the general election. So, to be honest, I don't think this Prime Minister is up for being surprised at all, because I just genuinely do not know what he stands for or what direction that he wants to take this country in.
And finally, Robbie Moore, a Conservative Keighley and Ilkley, and you have campaigned, and fair play, it's an important day for you. And Maggie Oliver we had on. I asked Maggie this, I asked Richard Tice this, and I'll ask you. Do you think this is an embarrassing day for the United Kingdom, like the rest of us do?
Unfortunately, I do. And I think it's even more embarrassing for those that have consistently said that we do not need more openness and more transparency, like those leaders across West Yorkshire. So we're all duty bound, like I am as a Member of Parliament, indeed anybody, to carry that responsibility forward for the good of those victims and survivors, indeed wider society.
I should say to you, as I said to Maggie, we thank you for the efforts that you've put in with your campaign, and the fight continues. Robbie Moore, thank you so much indeed. Campaigning for an inquiry to the grooming gang since 2019, the Shadow Farming Minister. What is it, 21 minutes to 7 o'clock? We're live across the UK. What a show today. Keep your calls coming. 0344 499 1000. Text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Back in 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Minutes to 7, JK on Drive. Yeah, Mike Graham back, the only way to wake up. What a legend, what a fantastic man he is. He's here tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. He'll be reacting to this amazing, shocking, embarrassing, whatever news you want to call it, that the Prime Minister, via Yvette Cooper, has announced a full national inquiry into the grooming gangs scandal. She announced in the Commons this afternoon that she would be apologising. The victims have been let down for too long. She says there are ongoing investigations where the suspects are illegal migrants. She says this has stretched back decades. There hasn't been data taken in case it might upset certain communities. And she says that sexual assault of children is one of the most heinous and unacceptable crimes. Laura Donovan, I'm appalled with this government, MPs in general. I'm also very grateful that talkTV covers serious subjects and gives us minions the truth to actually what's going on with these so-called educated MPs. Keep up your truth and beliefs for the rest of us. Thanks, Laura. Hello to Michelle. Jezzy. Maggie will be best placed giving evidence under oath now she can bring down Starmer. That'll be interesting. Stephen Donnelly. He's in Middlesbrough. I'm a father of a daughter and I've lost years of my life worrying every time she left the house and still do to this day. It's the feeling of being totally helpless and my heart breaks for the fathers of those kids. The powers that be have created all this bad feeling in the country through their diverse ideology. Remember when they were told, shh, for the sake of diversity? It's so depressing. We need change. We'll head to Basildon in Essex. Dave, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. Couple of minutes only. Busy show. Go.
Yeah, hello, Jess. Yeah, great show. Yeah, this has all been going on since the late 1970s. And it was first came up, I think it may have been The Sun published a bit about it in about 1979. I can still remember it. And it's been, every time it's been spoke about, it's been deliberately hushed up so that everybody's kept in the dark. And everybody's classed as a far-right racist. It's not just Starmer and the rest of the idiots that are around him. The Tories are every bit as bad.
Yeah. And I think that's the point. I mean, we can sit here quite rightly and criticise the judgment of the moron that is Keir Starmer, who seemingly doesn't understand in any which way public opinion. He didn't get it with the pensioners. He doesn't get it with the farmers. He doesn't get it with kids. But you know, for me, the real issue here, it goes back decades. How deep is this? How far back? How institutionalised is this cover-up? Because I'm old now. I don't care. I used to be proud. Today's embarrassing. Today is. It's more than embarrassing. It's totally unacceptable, and they need to weed out the people, local, national, whatever. It's disgusting, isn't it? It's disgusting.
You're absolutely right, but it's the police, it's social services. Yeah. It's been delivered right through John Major's government, right the way through Blair, Brown, Cameron. They've all as complicit as one another. There's no innocent parties. And any Tory MP who says he's been calling for inquiry for years should have resigned.
Out of principle.
Out of principle, and then something may have been done. Sunak covered it up. Boris covered it up. They're all equally guilty. They're all equally guilty.
Couldn't agree more, mate. Great to have you on. Dave in Basildon. We'll head to London. Caroline, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Oh, hi, Jeremy. I had to call you. I'm very passionate about this. I do not want a national inquiry, another one that costs millions and goes nowhere. I wanted a proper police force set up nationwide. There's enough proof of who these perpetrators are, from Maggie Oliver to the girls to ex-council people. I want them arrested and put on trial. If it was you or me, that's what would happen. We wouldn't have an inquiry. I can't see anyone, politicians, police, social workers, council leaders being arrested and go to jail. I'm fuming.
All I would say, sweetheart, and I could be totally wrong, right? All I would say is that for the first time, in my humble opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think the British people are going to allow this to go. And I just think that on 3 or 4 things, this hopeless idiot Starmer has had to backtrack, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. I think you're right to say that it's been decades. I think you're right to say that there's a concern that, you know, another elongated inquiry isn't going to cut to the chase. But I genuinely believe that the British people have found their voice. It started with immigration. If you talked about illegal immigration 5 years ago, you'd have been labelled a racist. Apparently, if you talk about Asian and British Pakistani men raping 7- and 8-year-old white girls 5 years ago, you're a racist. You're not today, with the work, the quality work that Maggie Oliver and all the people associated with her have done, like Robbie Moore, that MP. So many people have said this is unacceptable. This needs to be banged on and not let go of, and these people, you are right, need to be prosecuted. And if they have committed the crime of pushing this away, sweeping it under the carpet, whatever, during their tenure in public office, you're absolutely right. They need to be jailed, prosecuted, and the key... Honestly, I'm so strong on it. We appreciate your call. Caroline in London. Kevy's here at 7, Petrie at 10 o'clock, and Mike Graham, The Ledge, back tomorrow morning at 6. Talk Drive.
Refusing to watch that film, and for being a coward, not, you know, by signing those deportation papers. Greta, you little doom goblin, go straight to hell.
I think that there's nothing Hamas loves more than Daisy Dukes,
Yeah.
short shorts. Yeah. And that's what she was rolling up in. Can you imagine if she would have tried to prance around in those?
Yeah, Hamas's friend, right?
Well,
Hamas's
well, that's the thing. The collaboration of jihad and left-wing activism is something that I never foresaw until about 2024.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 10 to 7. Can I say a big thank you to everybody who's tried to call, who's tried to text. What a response today to that shocking news that, you know, another screeching U-turn by the government and national inquiry. Thank you to an amazing team, Jodie and Ryan and Amy and Jana. Mozzie, Jana, they're all there. Jana, but they're brilliant, and I mean that. Thank you. If we didn't get to you, I'm sorry, Jeff in Aberdeenshire. Rupert Lowe would be a brilliant person to lead the inquiry. He's been very vocal, and in my book, he's above reproach. Not sure an MP could. We're delighted to be joined now. We're doing this every day now. It's fantastic. Our sister paper, The Sun, John Lucas, Night News editor. Don't ask me what that means, because I don't think even he knows. How are you? I suspect, I should believe, because they've been calling for it, because we're all as one on this, you will be leading... that this government has been, well, shamed by the state, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, I'll be very surprised if it's not on the front page of every single newspaper. It's obviously, tomorrow morning, it's obviously the biggest story of the day. We've been calling for this, and we've been quite hard on the government over the last few months, you know, their attitude, because you know, there has been a bit of, more than a bit of burying their heads in the sand, and even a couple of months ago we had ministers calling discussion around this issue, a dog whistle.
Dog whistle, Lucy Powell with Tim Montgomery on that BBC programme. I would put this still further. I think today's an embarrassing day for the United Kingdom. I think this is a disgrace. I think it's high time we, as a society, were not scared, whatever your colour, creed or religion. I'm not interested. If an 8-year-old girl is raped, that is heinous and you have no place in my society. I know the Sun feel like that. We feel really strongly about that. And I don't know what you guys think at the Sun, but I almost feel like, despite people's frustration with politicians, that the British people have worked out that their voice does get heard. Read the pensioners, which you were behind, and read this as well, right? Yeah, absolutely. And we try to, communicate. We try to express our readers' opinions through. We get hundreds and hundreds of calls from our readers. Not every newspaper does, so we do know what they're thinking. We try and communicate that through our newspaper. I mean, just to point out, this isn't all just something that's in the past. So only on Friday we had the end of the latest trial. So this is part of Operation Lytton. Yeah. So that actually started in 2015. So talking 10 years ago to get this to trial. But just to give an idea of the scale of this, so it was 2 victims came forward back in 2015. As a result of that, police had to take 3,000 statements. That they had 4,000 exhibits, 16,000 documents recorded, 37 suspects charged for abusing 50 children. And this is, on Friday we had 7 men convicted. That was the second trial of, there'll actually be 7 trials in total. This is all in and around Rochdale. One of the I won't repeat it all, but horrible testimony from one of the victims who said that she felt she'd been abused by up to 200 men. So, and this will go on for the next couple of years, just this series. But you know what? Do you know what's so good about the Sun and stations that will talk about it like ours? I don't care if it takes forever. I believe this goes, and I'm not just saying that, I believe it goes far higher than any of us can possibly imagine. I think it's been an institutionalised cover-up, and I think this is going to come crashing down for a lot of people. And all of us who believe, as Maggie Oliver says, these are just innocent kids. You have to, that's what we have to go with. Quickly, the rest of the paper, but it will be on the front page of the Brilliant Sun. Yeah. Commando raid. We haven't talked about what's going on in the Middle East today because you wanted to be absolutely focused on this. Iranian officials say at least 224 people have been killed in Israeli strikes.
Yeah, that's on that side, and we think about 20 to 30 maybe on the Israeli side. The question that's hanging over this is, will the US be dragged into it? Yeah. We know that they're sending aircraft carriers out to the area. One possible way, our foreign editor, Nick Parker, is actually over there at the moment. He's found out, Israeli officials are saying, this is all about this Operation Rising Lion. It's all about taking out Iran's nuclear program. Yep. So they've hit these bases at Natanz and Isfahan, but there's one in Fordo, which is 300 feet below ground in a huge mountain complex. And they can't get that. Now, what they could do, they're thinking about launching a commando raid against this. It would be the biggest commando raid in history if they carry it out. I
have to say, I haven't got involved in the politics of this today, but I do think people should understand, who maybe, all the lefties, that Iran, the mad mullahs of Iran, have been financing terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis for flipping years.
Absolutely.
And people like that shouldn't have nuclear weapons. That doesn't mean that everything that Israel does, I agree with, or they've got right. But certainly there is a powder keg, and presumably something needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really glad you're doing the next story. I've only got a couple of minutes, but sunbed wars to reach boiling point. Why have suddenly Spaniards are all anti-tourist? Because it gives them money. What's the matter with them?
We don't understand it, and we go over there and we speak to both sides. We speak to British tourists, we speak to them. We don't understand it. So in Palma, which is the capital of Mallorca, they're going to scrap about 1,700 sunbeds from around the beaches in a bid to what the Spanish want more space for themselves. Although we point out, or that our Brits over there point out, there are loads and loads of beaches that the locals use.
Well, now years ago I did a programme, don't laugh, and I got pepper sprayed. You can see it on the front of your newspaper in Magaluf, and it was the Strip, right? And this is what I found out, which is why I find it quite interesting. I was told that the Strip in Magaluf is a mile and a quarter. There are 4 Balearic Islands, and the Strip in Magaluf accounts for 27% of the tourist income for those 4 islands, which tells you how much money tourism brings.
Yeah.
So I don't get this, because aren't they shooting themselves in the foot?
I don't get it. We love Spain, and
yeah, of course we do.
But they're falling out of love with the Brits. Very sad.
I think everybody is. Finally, great story to finish on a light-hearted note. A schoolgirl, Isla Wheatley, lives in a 2-bedroom home with her mum. She's got 122 tarantulas, 9 spiders, 2 praying mantises, 3 scorpions, 2 stick insects, 2 crabs, 6 geckos and a pet dog called Luna. She's not stopping there. She wants to expand her web of creepy crawlies.
I love this. Little Isla, she's very sweet. She says they're too cute to resist, she says, of the spiders. She wants the world to know they're not harmful. Her poor mum, who lives with her, is terrified of them.
Why would you allow... I'm sorry, I know I'm going to say the wrong thing. As a father of 6 who's blatantly a rubbish father, I wouldn't allow my kids to have spiders if I was terrified of them. What a great mum.
She's absolutely terrified. Trigger warning.
Yes.
Because we don't want to lose sales. It's on page 22 tomorrow, this picture. So if you're really, really scared of the spiders, just still get the paper, skip that page.
You think I'm going to be the story for everything, but I was once hypnotised by the Speakmans live on television because I'm terrified, and they ended up putting a live tarantula, massive thing, on my hands, on camera, and I'm going, oh, bless, look at its furry, and its feet are really spongy. And by the way, the hypno didn't work, because about half an hour later I freaked the what's-it off myself, went, ah, like that. Spiders are terrible things, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not for me.
In your house, have you got kids?
Yes.
If there's a spider, does Daddy deal with it or Mummy?
Daddy deals with it. It's the old glass over the top and gently out the door. Yeah.
Not smack it. Oh, you've been very healthy.
Yeah.
In my house, Mummy deals with it because Daddy would be like standing going, oh my God. Brilliant as ever, John. So the Sun tomorrow will lead with that story, Shamed by the State. It's a massive, massive story. And as John just said, peeps, this has been going on for years and is still going on. And for me, today is about... It's embarrassing for the United Kingdom, but the Sun and Talk and other people have been going on and on and on about this, and we're not going to let it go, are we?
No, absolutely not.
Because it's really, really important. So thank you so much indeed to John. Get yourselves the Sun tomorrow. Trigger warning, the spiders are on page 22, so if you don't like spiders, do not, whatever you do, read that. Thank you again to the team. What a legendary bunch you've been today. You've been awesome.